Absolutely. And I've heard people talk about, like, when they would be mixing records in like the 90s, like the mid 90s, like, on forward, that Burma Eyes and Vulgar were the two. Those were the two those were their two comparisons.
Man.
Like, all right, well, okay, this is our mix. Okay, well, all right, let's compare it to Burma Eyes. Let's compare it to Vulgar. You know what I mean?
Doesn't sound quite right. All right, turn up the Burn My Eyes fader some more. Not quite there. Turn up the Vulgar fader a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like those were the two sort of, and I think especially this one, because I think this is sonically a better sounding record than Vulgar. I think
so
it's
too.
more full.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Across, that's the thing. Across the board, like, Vulgar is an amazing Pantera record, amazing sounding Pantera record.
Right.
Pantera sounds amazing on that record.
Right.
But metal sounds amazing on this album. So, like,
That's the end of the show.
like there are so many different things that are done that are being done on here that so many other bands do going forward.
Episode 28, recorded May 19th, 2022. All right, you talk about whatever you want to talk about. I'm going to sit there and drink this porter.
You got a few more to go, so we may as well get into it. I'm going to talk about DAWs.
What's my favorite DAW to
No,
not use?
really, actually, I am. Because I had, well, shit, now I gotta pull it back up because I can't remember the name of it. I had, yep, that sounds better. There we go.
Man, that's weird.
Like, it's changing from week to week, and you didn't actually change anything?
No, it's just, it's so much hotter. The knob has to be higher than mine.
Right.
And that seems strange to me.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
But maybe those are just a different impetus.
Impedance?
There it is.
Different.
Different, yeah.
Impediments.
Yeah. Impediments. Speech impediments. All right.
But,
So, you were telling me about some DAWs or something.
yeah, so do you know... Well, it doesn't really matter. I bought a software bundle a while ago that was Magic's.
Yeah. You mentioned
branded,
that.
Yeah, and so that's like Music Maker and Acid Pro and all this other shit.
Okay.
There was a whole suite of this software, and I never really got around to using it. But it was like $5 for all these different versions a few years ago. And the other day I was finally, because I've got this music that I wrote over years. The chiptune sort of stuff.
And it's amazing.
Thank you. And it's in this like online web-based tool, and I've always been like, I would really like to get that sort of out of there. You can export it and do whatever you want with it.
Oh, that's good.
But I've always wanted to like remake some of that stuff in better quality and like with more robust tool set.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if I just get a DAW that I can use in the same way as that, I can remake this and, make some changes, make it a little bit better. And I tried using the one that I had, the Magic's Music Maker, and just wasn't really as feature-rich as I would have liked. It had like a sort of grid-based, what do you call it? There's a name for that style of production suite where you can just like...
Step,
yes.
like the piano roll, or...
yeah, it's step something.
But where you're like...
Where you're clicking the things and picking the voice that you want for it. And
yeah.
Add effects on it and all this stuff. Different instruments, add drums, all this other stuff. So I like working that way.
Yeah, sure.
It's really like low effort, and you can sort of get something out there pretty quick. So I was like, how do I find a good one of these?
Yeah.
And the software I had didn't really do it for me. So I was like, started looking around. And I found whatever the term is, step something DAW, basically. And a couple of suggestions came up, and then one that I picked was called Serato. Have you ever heard of that?
Nope.
It's apparently like relatively new brand.
Okay.
Not an endorsement or anything, but you can download a free trial, and I was playing with that some earlier today. And it seems pretty cool.
Awesome.
So I'm going to try to use that a little bit.
Cool.
See what I can do, see if I can build some sounds and what kind of flexibility it has and see what I can get out of that. Otherwise, maybe try like FL Studio or something like that.
That's what I was gonna suggest.
Yeah.
Was Fruity Loops, because I know that that's like, that seems to be like the gold standard, or not the gold standard, but that seems to be what a lot of electronic musicians use and have used
Yes.
for decades now.
Long time.
So, and did you mess with Reaper at all?
No, but that was another recommendation that I saw a lot.
Lots of metal guys use Reaper.
Okay.
So,
Do
but
you think it would have a similar good tool set for what it is that I'm trying to do with this music?
the thing that's nice about Reaper is that it's very cheap, and and they have a
Cheaper,
really,
more like.
yeah. Well, and they have
Fuck
like a
me.
kind of a, if I remember correctly, they have kind of a robust trial version.
Okay.
And so it would be very easy to figure out if it can do
Perfect.
what. And the other nice thing about Reaper, from what I can tell, is that it's sort of similar to Pro Tools in the sense that lots of people are using it. So when you run into a problem, someone's already had that problem
Right.
and posted about it somewhere. So and then a lot of the people that are using Reaper are I was gonna say amateurs, but that feels like a dirty word, and I don't mean it in like a dirty sense. I mean they're creators, like they're using Reaper to make their music. That's what I mean.
Gotcha.
They're creators.
Okay. Yeah.
They're creators. They're not doing session work per se. You know what I mean? Like,
Or they're not getting a band in to record. They're just doing their own stuff.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, some people some people do that. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But it is like,
Yeah, there are a lot of software suites out there, like in game creation. There's like Unity, for example, which is like a lot of small time people doing their own things, and there's a huge support community, like you're discussing. It's like if you run into a problem, someone may have already solved it, and they may have written a tool to do so. You know, that sort of thing. So
right.
that's really beneficial to be able to get into an ecosystem that's already
Right. That was it.
mature like that.
This is really funny. So it's like, because we just released the video game episode from like October, and I deleted the preamble because I was like, oh, we talked about DAWs, that was boring. So I mentioned that to you, and you're like, all right, well, let's just have it again.
Let's fucking talk about DAWs, motherfucker.
But it is,
The people are getting their DAW talk one way or
yeah.
the other.
Mm-hmm.
The another.
Talk DAW to me.
Anyway.
So digital audio workstation.
Yeah. DAW.
And so like this is also technically a DAW.
Well, this is a paw.
you know.
A physical audio workstation.
Yeah.
Uh,
Actually, it's a DSW, a digital studio
Ooh.
workstation.
Is it also a DSPAW or it's a digital studio piss audio workstation?
That's not that one.
That's not that one? Okay.
That's not that one.
Okay.
That one got left in the garage when it got demoed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did it does that imply that it got demoed?
It either got demoed or
Like as far as you know, the garage came down around it.
or the people, or I mean, I don't know. The people that were doing it might have been like, he said that this was full of piss, but
But maybe he was full of shit.
yeah. Let me take this home, see if I could do something with it. You know, that's not impossible. But I was like, gather that up with the walls, put it in that dumpster in the driveway.
I hope for their sake they didn't like take it inside their homes where they live and spend time and eat.
Yeah,
breathe.
it's just been sitting out there in the garage, and that back wall was blown off in like a tornado a few years ago. So nature was reclaiming that garage.
Nature was healing inside of this.
Yeah, inside of that back there. So, but I do remember when we did have that conversation, because what I was saying,
The one that got nuked. Because I don't remember what we talked about exactly.
I think I was just talking about, I don't really remember, But what I don't remember what started, but but you did say one of the things I was saying was that the people that I've talked to, that really seem to know what they're doing, like professional, like, yeah, man, I pay my fucking mortgage, being an audio engineer.
Yeah.
Right. Those guys don't think that Pro Tools is the best.
Mm-hmm.
Like as in they don't even think it has the best workflow. They don't think that it has necessarily the best capabilities or whatever. And it's like, but it's the industry standard for whatever reason, whatever confluence of factors have made it the one that most people use. And it's like, so you should learn how to use that one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sort of his advice. And in retrospect, well, I remember when I said that, you said something that I hadn't thought about, which was what we were saying, which was, you're like, yeah, so there's going to be a lot of support for it. And you're absolutely right, because every problem I've run into, I've been able to find a solution very quickly.
Right.
Because it is so widely used.
Yeah.
And another thing that's been enormously helpful for me, and I'm glad, is that because I've had people contact me to do sessions or to do sessions here, and they're using Pro Tools. And since they're using Pro Tools,
just bring that project in.
I can just bring their whole session in, pull it up, and then I can look at their session, and then I can do the same thing with the drum track, send it to them, and
right.
You don't have to because what you have to do otherwise is you have to commit all your edits and your effects if you have them and all that sort of stuff, and which is,
what do you mean by commit?
You have to consolidate it all down into a single WAV file.
Okay.
So maybe you have a drum take, right? That is, maybe you did 3 takes, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you did those 3 takes all on top of each other, like 3 totally different passes, okay? Or maybe you did the first verse and then you muddled up in the first chorus, so then you punched in, got to the first chorus, out to the outro, and then you want to do something different now, and then you had the outro, right?
Right.
If he was working in Logic and I was working in Pro Tools or vice versa or whatever, I would have to consolidate all those, make those all just single files.
Yeah.
And then give him those complete files. Whereas if we're using the same DAW, if you're using Pro Tools, then I can just give him the session and he can be like, oh, well, I actually liked what he did that first take. Let me just drag this over here. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to punch it in here through halfway through the second verse instead of right at the beginning of the second verse, Yeah. Or like, oh, I don't think he heard how that cymbal got cut off. Let me, you know what I mean? It just, it lets you, I mean, in a bad way, it lets you delay decision making, I guess, is what some could say. But it also lets the person who should be responsible for those decisions be responsible for those decisions.
Right. If that's their call to make, then
Yes.
That's a very handy tool to give them.
Exactly.
For whatever reason, the analogy just popped into my head of like giving someone a completed Lego set versus giving them a completed Lego set that you've glued together.
Yeah.
Right. It's basically what it is.
Yeah.
Who would ever do that?
It's like you can repaint it if you want to.
Right. But you can't take it apart or add things to it.
Right.
Or you can add things to it. Whatever.
Anyway. Yeah. Like you can. Yeah. That's real. That's not the worst analogy, actually. I'm going to change something here.
Completely goofy one, but apt. I'll stand by that stupid analogy.
Yeah, so I'm glad that I'm using Pro Tools. The biggest downside is the price, and the whole subscription based model.
They've gone to that now.
They're mostly that, or you pay like $700 or some.
So you can pay one time.
You can.
Okay.
Yeah, and at first I was like, I don't know if this is worth it, because I didn't know if I was going to stick with it. Now I feel like I am, but I don't know.
But now you've been subscribed so long.
Well, not that long.
Okay.
It's like 6 months or something. So
cool. That's like Adobe software these days.
Oh God,
it's all that.
it is, man. I hate that too,
It's
man.
terrible.
Because
Yeah.
I'm using Premiere and Photoshop. You know,
There's a fantastic. I'll find it and give it to you later.
Mhm.
There's a fantastic grid. There's a big image that somebody created, or maybe a group of people created, that is just. It's divvied up by Adobe product, and it's just a list of alternatives.
Cool.
It's a huge list because there are a lot of alternatives to these things. If you don't like using Adobe shit and or paying for it, if you don't pirate it already, you know.
Right. Yeah, and it's like a lot of these things I've just been sort of like slave to, or not slave, like beholden to. Well, who do I know, and what do they use?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what they use. Okay, teach me how to use that. All right. Well, I guess this is what I'm using. And
There's value in that.
yeah, because like Justin uses Photoshop and Justin uses Premiere.
Yeah.
You know, Keith, videographer
Right.
that we know, uses Premiere.
Mhm.
So that's what I got, and that's what I know how to do stuff in. And I, almost to a fault, everything that I know how to do in a DAW or editing or Photoshop, everything I know how to do is very functional. It's very like, well, I was making this thing and I needed this to be able to make that thing.
Right.
And I learned just enough to make the thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know how any of this really, really works. You know, like I never really had the discipline or the patience to take a Pro Tools class.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or watch a introduction to Premiere video or whatever. I'm like, just let me get the feel of the interface of the program. Let me figure out how to do what I need to do. And whenever I need to do something different,
Go look it up.
I'll figure it out then.
I mean, that's how programming works.
Really?
Seriously. Like when programmers say that they spend like most of their day on Google or Stack Overflow or whatever, it's for a reason. Because there's a billion things that you're not going to remember. It's not useful to remember.
Sure.
That you can just go look up. And that's just how you do that.
That's an interesting concept. I remember running into that idea when when doing my physics degree. How high math did you take? Did you get to like DiffyQ?
No.
Cal 3?
I
Cal
took
2?
Cal 2 and discrete, I think, were the highest.
Okay, discrete mathematics. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Cal 2 will be enough to understand this idea. So, so you're familiar with integrals and integral tables?
No.
So
Tables, no. But I understand why that's an important thing.
Right. So it's like, it turns out like derivatives are easy as shit to do, right? Like taking the derivative of something in calculus is like, it's just like turning a crank. Like, what are the rules? Blah. Okay. But going backwards is not so easy.
Right.
And because of that, there's all these really weird techniques and, integration by parts and, or in substitution and
Yes.
all these weird, wacky things. Trigonometry. And so it's all about, because the algebra is so sticky, and that's really it.
Mm-hmm.
And like calculus itself is not that difficult, but the algebra you need to do is awful. I didn't really get my algebra together until differential equations. And
Damn.
so what happens is that to do an integral, to go backwards, you have to do a lot of manipulation of your equation algebraically to make it look like something different so that the integration will work.
Right. And to even do that, you need to be able to identify what it is that you need to do next.
Right. You need to be able to identify those patterns and those identities and whatnot. And so, like, a lot of them are like trig substitutions, and trig formulas get very wacky and very tedious to memorize.
Yeah.
I can't throw them all. I can't throw them out at you right now.
I sure as fuck can't anymore. Yeah.
Like, I can derive a lot of them, but let's not go that direction.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Oh, the show.
Yeah.
And so because of that, and because of like hundreds of other things, like you often will have, like, I mean, I don't know what physics students or people do now, but in the mid aughts,
Mhm.
what often you would have is like a math handbook in your backpack that you'd open up, and like a section of it would be just integral tables. And it would be, if you have an integral of this form where this is this and this is this, this is what the result is going to be.
Right.
Right. And I remember when I was in a PhD program, like one of the students we were talking with like one of our mentor professors, and they're like, what's the point of me memorizing this stuff if I'm just going to look it up anyway? Because he was like, well, I'm not going to, we're going to do this exam or we're going to do this whatever, but no.
Right. No table. No.
Right.
Yeah.
And what he said, I thought was extremely insightful. And there's a real sort of kernel of wisdom to this that I think is important to learning and to the concept of learning, and especially in this modern sort of information age. And he was like, if you don't have it at your fingertips, you won't know that it exists, and you won't know to look for it. And now that doesn't necessarily mean that it always has to be at your fingertips, but there maybe that's the next step of it. It doesn't always need to be at your fingertips now and forevermore, but there needs to be a period in your life when it was, because later on you might not be able to recognize that pattern.
When you say at your fingertips, you mean from your own mind.
Yeah.
Not as reference.
Oh yes, I'm sorry.
Okay,
yeah, that's the way that
gotcha.
he said it. That's the way that he said it.
I understand.
But no. Yeah, when I say at your fingertips, I mean like it's just here. You just got it.
Right.
You just know what it is.
Maybe on the tip of your tongue.
That's a better way to say it.
Okay.
It's just in your head. You
I
know
got
what
you.
I mean? Not like,
right. Because I was like, well, the reference
is at your finger. Yeah,
is
that's
always
not what I mean.
Yeah,
God
okay.
damn it. Whoops. Thank you for catching that.
Okay.
But like, yeah, conceptually, mentally, you have it memorized. It's in there. You know it. So that you don't, because otherwise you're like, if you don't know that the pattern exists, then you're not going to know how to look it up.
Right.
And I feel like that's probably relevant to what you're talking about, in the sense, like, I'm good at Google, but I couldn't go do your job.
Right. And there are people who try to do that, where they just like Google a problem that someone tells them about, and then they go find an answer and copy and paste it. That's like a very common like thing that you hear about happening, and it's not good. But the things that you go look for like that aren't how to solve this problem. The problem solving is the part that you do in your mind, right? The technical details of like, well, okay, in Perl, does a 1 inside of two parentheses, does that resolve to an integer or a string in scalar context or something like that? That's the kind of shit that you understand by doing it a lot, but if you just need to know the answer to that question, you're not going to know it in your mind.
Right. Yeah.
There's no reason to have to know that. That was kind of a bad example in some ways. Right. But you get what I'm saying. Like technical implementation details are the sorts of things that live in reference manuals to be referred to.
Sure.
Whereas how to write an algorithm, there are books on algorithms, but that's the sort of thing that you really think about because it's way more contextual than.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
There's a Reddit post I saw a few days ago, or maybe a week ago or something, that was like someone posted it in like, R funny. And it was like, here's like the guys that I'm paying to fix my car watching a video on how to fix my car, like, and then like I was happy because the top comment was like, I'm a mechanic and yes, I do this all the time. My skill set is not instantly knowing how to solve every problem. My skill set is knowing how to put things back together and them still work. My skill set is being able to take things apart and put them back together without damaging them.
Right.
And and having all the specialized tools that I need to do all that effectively.
Yeah, and how to use them all. And
Right.
sure, sure.
And I showed that to Alice. She's like, that's exactly the same for me.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
You know, and it's funny too, because she's like, yeah. I'm good at putting that skin back together, you know, that whatever, you know,
Right.
sew that up and, or however that shit works. But no, man, like, because she has to you know, like, okay, how do we treat this? What do we do that? You know what I mean? How do I do this procedure? And I feel like you'd have to be, that might be shocking to hear, I guess, but
I'm sure it is, because I think people just don't think about, when they think about an expert or a specialized role like that.
Right.
You think about, it just seems like magic on some level, right? Because there's so much shit that goes into doing that. You're like, well, they must know what they're doing at all times.
Right.
There's just like an implicit trust there,
right,
that you have.
This kind of almost relates to my friend Corey was over here hanging out the other day, and is that you?
That was
is that
you.
Me? Oh my god!
I ain't got that damn tone on my phone.
Oh, I know what Allison's ordering for dinner. But no, he was over here the other day, and we were talking about all sorts of stuff. But I was reminded of when, because he and I met because we needed a bassist for the Small Deal record, and through a mutual friend, I got his number, and thank God I was able to get him on the phone, and was able to convince him to come and do the record.
Right.
Man.
Worked out more than well.
Oh my God. Because since he played bass on the record, I was able to get two hot shit keyboard players and a hot shit saxophone player. And then because he was on the record, I was able to get other people to play live with us. You know what I mean? It completely elevated everything they were trying to do. So
awesome.
Thank you, Corey.
I don't think I ever saw him play with you.
You did.
I saw maybe
at Red Dwarf. He played with us.
Okay. Oh, Red Dwarf. Right. Yeah. Never mind. True.
But yeah, if you came to those first few Natsuo shows, I don't think he had tracked the record for us.
Exactly. I remember you telling me that somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he wasn't with us yet.
Gotcha.
Live, right? Like we kind of needed. I wanted to build up a little bit before. I wanted to like get a little bit under our belts and make to where we could afford to pay him. Because that's the thing too, is with a guy like that, doesn't matter how fun the gig is, doesn't matter how easy it is, doesn't matter how much of a good time it is. If I'm asking him to come play with us on a Saturday night, he's saying no. I'm asking him to say no to something else.
Sure.
And that something else would probably be paying him more, so I need to pay him something.
That's fair. Yeah.
But so he's just pro beyond pro. Okay, best musician I've ever played with. And he and I learned so much by watching him record. That was like one of the most like educational like experiences of my life. One, because if you want to get good at fucking running Pro Tools, be in a situation where you're paying someone to play and that shit's got to run right.
Yeah.
So that you can track their shit, you know?
Yes.
First of all, that's number one, right?
That's your ass if not. So, yeah.
Yep. And but watching him record, like when he got to say a part that took a few takes, like a section that took a few takes, his demeanor on the first take versus the seventh take was the exact same. Because he knew he was going to get it.
Mm-hmm. Got the professional cool.
Yeah. He had 1,000% confidence that he was going to get it right. I was like, oh, no, that wasn't it. Let's do it again. Almost. One more time. One more time. You know? Maybe next time. Wait, let me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just didn't care. Whereas like me, if I don't have something by the third take, at the time, I would get all in my head And I would be like, I waste everyone's time on bitch shit drummer. I should have never tried to do this. Oh my God. Oh, I should have practiced more. Oh my God. I'm worthless. Oh, just shoot me in the face. Kill me now. I never want to play drums again. Oh! Like, I get into that. I would get into that.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Real quick, you know?
Yeah, I got you.
And
I've been there.
And I had been around so many musicians who could do an aspect of music really, really well.
Yeah.
But I hadn't spent a lot of time with someone who was a professional musician. Like, I'd been around people who could do aspects of it at a professional level.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Like, you run into that a lot in, like, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Like, you might be a purple belt, but you've got a black belt level. There's, like, one move that you can do at a black belt level.
Right. You put all your points into that. You spec that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can do that there, but not everything else about your game is at that level. So you're just, you're like, oh, I'm rolling with that guy. Watch out for that triangle. don't, because it's like, if you even smell that triangle coming, it's too late.
Right.
And so, whereas Corey was like, to stick with, it's stupid to say like a black belt in music. That's so stupid. But
I can think of worse analogies.
But he wasn't just someone who like, well, I can play my songs really well. I can do this thing really well. He was like, no, man, I can fucking record. I can make music. I can make any music that's happening around me better.
Mm-hmm.
That's my job. And I can, and so I almost sort of think of that.
And more to the point, like if the thing that he does do specifically isn't quite working at the time, it's not going to ruin everything else.
What do you mean?
It's he'll make it happen eventually, right?
Oh yeah,
like you were saying.
Right.
And that's in it, like that persistence, that consistency,
Oh yeah. And there's something that's like really inspiring about working with musicians too. The ones that I've been really lucky to work with is there is this sort of like commitment to the music first. And
commitment is a better word than consistency, yeah.
And it's like, all right, well, like once you say yes, to me that's like the unspoken code, right? Like the unwritten rule of being a musician. And I've been really fortunate to be around people who have sort of taught me this through their actions,
mm-hmm.
which is if someone asks you to do the gig, once you say yes, you do absolutely everything you can to make the music as good as you possibly can. Yeah. Doesn't matter if the pay is shit. Doesn't matter if the band leader is an asshole. Doesn't matter if the weather's terrible. Doesn't matter if the hang is terrible. Doesn't matter if you're sick. None of that matters. You do everything you can to make the music as good as you can make it in that moment. And if it's really bad, then don't say yes again. But once you give your word,
yep.
then you're really in it.
Yeah, I mean that proves that you're reliable.
That's so much of what it is.
That's a huge deal, especially in that kind of collaborative space.
Yeah, it's so weird to sort of go ahead.
To be able to count on someone like that is like, that's one of those in sports they would call that intangible. One of those intangibles.
I see. I've gotten so many gigs that I probably shouldn't have gotten, that I was not the best for, just because I'm really reliable and I try hard.
Right. Because man, imagine how many people just like flake out for like the littlest thing.
Yep.
It's got to be a ton.
So many.
So
many.
That's worth more than ability a lot of times, I imagine.
It is. Yep.
Can we get a drummer? Can we get them here?
Yeah. Will they just do what they say they're gonna do?
Right.
Yeah. It's and so, but yeah, like it's been really strange to sort of work with Alice, or not work with, but like be married to Allison, and like Like to think about like how her job is and like what is depending on her job.
Like the stakes.
Yeah, the stakes involved at her job.
Yeah.
Like she's literally, oh shit, I zigged when I should have zagged. He's dead now. Right? And I'm just like reading music off of a page.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And she can call in sick, but I can't. And that's interesting.
You mean like to like a gig or something? Or
To a gig, yeah, to a gig, you know, or shit, man, even
to
to
a recording
teaching.
session? Oh, sure. Okay.
Even to teaching, man. Like, you know, when I was teaching at a music school, it's like if I had to call in on a day, I still I didn't get paid, first of all, and I had to make up that time later. You know, like I still had to teach those kids that lesson.
Oh, sure.
At some other time.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there was, and then while I was there, I am unreachable.
Yeah.
Allison's not unreachable at the hospital. There's like sometimes some 20 to 30 minute, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hour stretch where she's like unreachable.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like that's going to be bookended by she's going to have downtime, you know?
I mean, I feel like that's a big part of that is the scale that you're working at, though, right? You're working at a much smaller scale, and she's working at a team-based, large, so you're able to be more flexible, even though the stakes are higher on a case-by-case basis.
Of course, and there's a lot more demand for her skill set. You know what I mean? And so the pay is better, and it may, you know what I mean? And there's all sorts of like economic lenses that certainly explain that problem.
Yeah.
You know, or explain that condition.
It's just an interesting thing to think about.
But it was an interesting like dichotomy to sort of like see like me feeling like I have to leave a family's, you know, like a family member's, like to not be able to stay as long as I really should have at like a family get together or something because I've committed to do this gig. And I've got to get to it. You know, and it's like just such a, you know, it's just an interesting like juxtaposition, or like for me to like not be able to look at my phone because I'm teaching some kid like, nope, that's, you know, you got to turn your hand like the, you know, that's not where your thumb goes. Like that's not life and death, you know. But it I don't know.
No.
It's just an interesting thing.
Yeah. It's not that, I mean, in the grand scheme, it's not all that important, but it's just you doing it.
Right.
So
that's really it. That's really it. Like if I, right. But what I was sort of saying with bringing up Corey and like his demeanor is I imagine that's like he was approaching doing that session the same way that you probably approach doing programming projects. Like, well, I don't know how to do this, but I'm good at figuring out how to do shit I don't know.
Within reason, yeah, sure.
You know, I'm good. It's like, okay, this is a problem to solve, and my real skill set is solving problems. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the meat of that job.
So something I hear about a lot, sort of, is like people teaching themselves to program. And then I've heard of it both ways. I've heard of people teaching themselves to. It's like, did you hear that? You hear what so and so's doing lately? No. What are they doing? Oh man, they taught themselves to program, and they're like programming stuff for Boeing. Blah 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 blah. And I was like, well, but you didn't go to school for that. Oh, I need to go. Oh, I didn't need to go to school for that. Blah 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 blah. I just taught myself. Or people that are, well, I taught myself how to do this, but they won't let me have a job because I don't have a degree. Da 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 da. Like, what's your experience or take on that sort of stuff?
Well, which part? Because there's kind of two questions there.
Both, like, really.
So, like, can you teach yourself how to program, basically?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what do you mean by teach yourself exactly? Because
I don't know, because I'm not really sure what they mean either.
Okay, I got you. I mean, you can get a book or a PDF or, you know, whatever the fuck. You can go to the C++ website and you can pore over their documentation as to what each little aspect of the language does. And you can like figure it out. you'd have to be some sort of a crazy person to do that, but you could do that. Or you could sign up for a like an online course, watch a bunch of videos, do exercises. You could do it that way. Or you could know someone who is a C++ programmer and have them show you like the basics, and then go from there and read the documentation on the more advanced stuff. Or you can go to college, learn it there. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it.
Have you met self-taught programmers?
I'm sure. Nobody comes to mind, but
Or have you? So you haven't knowingly had any experience with self-taught programmers?
well, I mean, so before I went to school for it, before I went back to college, I didn't even know what programming really was. But if you download, like, so back in like 2010 or whatever, if you downloaded Visual Studio, Microsoft's IDE, the Integrated Development Environment, it would come with, like, I got Visual Studio free C Sharp at the time.
Okay.
And it came with like a set of 5 tutorials, and one showed you how to make like a tic-tac-toe game. One showed you how to do a calculator or something like that. And so I went through those, and it kind of, I was able to familiarize myself with enough things to where I felt like I knew how basically it worked. And so I was sort of on that road to like figuring it out for myself with a tutorial. Because I mean, that's what I mean. Like, depends on what you mean by teach yourself, right?
I guess
Learn without anyone else's input.
Right.
Yeah, because there are resources out there.
Right. Yeah, I guess like I thought it was. I haven't run across. So I know a number of people who are professionals in a variety of fields, and there is no other field in which I know people that are professionals in that I have heard about people being self-taught to the same level of competency in that field. Like, no one's been like, oh, like I know someone who's an archaeologist. I've never heard someone say like, oh,
self-taught archaeologist.
Yeah, I taught myself how to be an archaeologist. I taught myself how to be an aerospace engineer. I taught myself how to be a chemical engineer.
Right.
You know what I mean? I taught myself how to fly airplanes. I taught myself how to be a surgeon. I've never heard that.
Sure.
I would never even say that I taught myself how to be a drummer.
Yeah.
And so, but I've heard like just I know 2 people who claim to be self-taught programmers.
Well, it's kind of interesting because, you know, to fly a plane, you need a plane, right? You can't, You can't just go do that.
To be a surgeon, you need bodies. Yeah.
Yeah. You need someone who's going to live or die.
Yeah.
You need to be able to exercise those skills.
Fair enough.
To play drums, you need a drum set.
Fair enough.
To learn to program, you just need a computer.
Which everyone has.
It can be the cheapest fucking computer imaginable.
Sure.
Because people were learning how to program back in the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, whatever, you know.
Right. That's
maybe a bit far back, but definitely the 80s, let's say.
Sure. That's a solid point.
So you can, and not only can you learn to program, you can build an entire application and put it up for people to use. It may not work to scale because traffic might become a problem and all this stuff, but you can totally do that. You can learn how to do that in a room by yourself, for sure. And some people learn better that way. Some people can just, you build the model of what you're doing in your head.
Yeah.
And that is how a lot of people just do that.
Yeah, I guess that I have sort of an initial skepticism, I guess, but then I guess like maybe that's the thing, is that a program either works or it doesn't. Right?
That's a difficult question.
All right, fair
actually.
enough. I'll back up on that.
Yeah. I won't go into why. We can do a programming cast if you want to sometime.
Gotcha.
But like
what are the checks? Like if you're, because that's the thing. Like when someone is like, I'm a self-taught whatever, you know, like I'm gonna be, because you need to know how to do something.
Well, so here's the thing. Like I was sort of, I was saying how the job is problem solving, right? If you're good at problem solving, you can work as a software developer, for example. You can work as a programmer. You just need to learn the language. You need to learn to speak the language.
Right.
Right? And you can learn any number of languages.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're good at that, you can do that. You just need to be able to speak the right languages. The difference comes when you are having to work in a team. For example, that's a different skill set
Sure.
than doing it yourself.
Mm.
One of the courses I took at UHD was like a team-based engineering project where we got on a team, picked someone to be the team quote-unquote leader, to delegate tasks to the other people to figure out how to get a thing made in a semester, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a different skill set to problem solving. It is still problem solving, but you're solving different problems.
It is.
Right? You're not solving software-based problems. You're solving social problems and time-based problems. Like, you're time boxing and you're, figuring out how to delegate work out, how to split up the work logically to where it can be done and then brought together later. That sort of thing. So anyone can sit in the room with enough time and figure out how to write software. Doing it to standards that other people look for, or correctly to spec, or handling all the errors that you should have handled, or in a readable way to anyone else, because it could be an unbroken, just paragraphs of code that no one else can read but you, but it works, right? So there are all sorts of different things that go into working as a programmer versus just being one.
I feel like it all makes sense to me now.
Okay.
Like what I mean to say is I'm gonna apply to be a programmer tomorrow. No, because I get it, and there is a direct there's a direct analogy to music.
I'm sure there is, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like
because you can be a savant fucking drummer and then not know how to play with a band. It's just one aspect of it.
Sure, yeah. Or when I think about, because that was the thing that was so nice about working with Michael when we were writing all the small deal material, was that he spent some time at Berklee College of Music. He spent some time at MI, and so he and I we both speak the same musical language,
right? So
that made songwriting effortless for us, because I was able to say, like, let's add a beat to it. Or let's do this rhythm, and I write out the rhythm, or, oh, that's not working. Okay, what rhythm are you doing? Okay, let me write it out. Okay, well, we should try this, and I write out a different rhythm, or da-da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, did you do a key chain? Let's do a different chord there. Let's try, or we speak the same language, so it's very easy to do arrangements. Let's try doing it 3 times before we go to that. Let's put in let's do it. Let's add 3 more. Let's add 2 more measures. All of that was just effortless.
Right.
That to be able to communicate at that level, and so it made the songwriting just so enjoyable.
Right, like it lubricates the workflow.
It's so great.
Takes so many of the small little impediments out of it, so you can think about what you're actually caring about, which is the music.
And then he and I were able to make charts, and then give those to the people that we hired to play with us, and then that made it to where we could do 2-hour sets and sound like we were a band with a 45-minute rehearsal. One 45-minute, 1 hour-long rehearsal.
Right.
And then we're able to have, guitar, drums, bass, keys, horns, all on stage, ripping through these, a 2-hour-long set. And it sounds like we're just a fucking machine. I mean, it not like a machine, but it sounds like, oh, well, those guys rehearse a few times a week. They rehearse several times leading up to this gig. It's like, no, we do it one time.
45 minutes.
But it's because we were able to put it all into that language on the charts, and all those guys speak that language. And,
exactly, yeah.
Whereas you think about what we were doing with just say All Severed, how goddamn impossible would it have been to have taught someone else our music, especially the last stuff that we did.
Yeah, absolutely.
you know.
We didn't even know how to describe it. We just knew how to play it, had to literally perform it physically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, and thank God though too.
that's why I can't remember some of that shit anymore. Because the muscle memory, like I can play again all the way through, but there are parts of like only an ending where I'm like, I don't fucking know what I did here.
You know why?
15 years ago.
Because we didn't play that one live.
Yeah, but we played it a lot in practice, and if we, my point is, if we had formalized it and even written it down once anywhere,
right,
that would be doable.
Right, like we would like you would get into situations where you didn't know that you and Jeremy were playing something different until you were tracking.
Right, like that's what you do there. That's not what I do there.
Oh no!
Oh shit!
And I mean,
that definitely happened at least once.
But one thing though is that we were, you know, like Jeremy was in band for 4 years, I think. I was in band for 4 years. You were in band for a few
years, yeah.
So we did have a serious foundation of, you know,
we knew like what music was,
like concepts of meter and subdivision, and we didn't just. It wasn't just. We'll go diggity buggity ba 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 ba.
Right. It wasn't that. Yeah, because I can imagine like someone just playing on feel alone and just like au natural, just
dude. That's how Kevin Schubert plays.
Who?
Little Kevin.
Little Kevin
from Eden.
His first name is Little. His last name is Kevin.
Yeah,
as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And then his Sir. Like some people have a title like Sir, you know, or the Third. That's Schubert for him.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
But no, man, he Lie in Wait, Horde Affair, Cassius the Ghost, and then Play With Me in Eden. And I remember like us getting to get like this happened a few years ago. He's like, yeah, I have this heavy song. You know, you want to fuck around with it? Like, yeah, sure, let's do it. And there's never been a harder song for me to try and learn in my life. Ever. Okay?
I remember you telling me about this, yeah.
Because he's just like, well, because he just learned all by ear from listening to like the craziest shit, the crazy metalcore shit that he listened to, you know, like Scarlet and Dillinger and Converge and just all that fucking banana sandwiches fucking shit. And he's like, oh, I guess that's what music is. So, you know, gung 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 wang gung wang gung wang 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 gung 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 wang gung wang wang gung gung gung, and he can play it the same every time. Like he
knows it
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And then like the song is 22 of those parts in a row, non-repeating.
Yeah. And so now he has to describe it to you so that you can follow along.
Right. And he's like, and he just, all he has is he's just like, I'm gonna play it for you.
The way to convey that information is to just play what he plays.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. And then I try to do it. I'm like, all right, what's the next riff? You know?
Right.
And then I got to him, I was like, all right, if you want me to learn this, you just need to record this. Just push record. Just fucking record it, and then I'll learn it.
So did you write it out after you?
He didn't want to work on it again.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Oh.
No, but what I would have done for my process, would have been, if I was going to learn that now, I'll say it that way. If I was going to learn that now, I'd have him record it. I'd throw it into a DAW, and then I would put markers, and I would be like, all right, riff 1, riff 2, riff 3, riff 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you know, however many parts there are, and then I would learn each part.
Yeah.
You know, or I would learn or sections of parts and to just kind of like build it up, you know,
right.
is what I would do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, Kevin's certainly a musician, certainly an amazing guitar player.
Yeah.
But it is difficult for him to communicate his music to other people.
Yeah. It's not to say that doing it that way is invalid.
Exactly.
That's totally a way that you can do it.
Right.
You don't ever have to have a formalized, you know, quote unquote education in whatever field it is.
Right.
To be able to do some things.
Yeah. And I guess like there is an aspect of it too, which is, like, can you do it again?
Yeah.
In music specifically, because, I can do this crazy thing on piano. Well, do it again. And you can't. And it's like, well, you can't really do that. Like, that's like, you're not playing that because you're hearing it. You're playing
It's
that.
more improvisation at that point, really.
It's not even improvisation. You're playing that because your muscles are doing that. Right?
Well, yeah, I don't know. It depends, probably.
Well, what I'm saying is like I can sit at the piano right now and I could probably like fake some things.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Like, oh, well, show me a few chords. Okay. And I could probably, you know, stumble upon something, you know, or whatever that sounds like an okay improvisation or sounds like some, you know, or like makes you feel something like some avant-garde, whatever, or just some moody, intense thing.
You come across a couple of chords that really work well next to each other, and
right, or an interval or whatever.
Yeah.
But I could not do the same thing twice.
Same here for keyboard, for example.
Yeah, because I'm not disciplined in that. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm taking like drum patterns.
yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just doing them on the keys.
I do the same thing.
or whatever. And so
I was doing the same thing earlier today in that fucking DAW. yeah. Exactly.
You know, or whatever. And I guess you know, like there's just, I mean, yeah, like there's a vocabulary aspect. There's a shared language aspect to these things. And when it comes to working with other people, like, okay, cool. Do you want to do this? Do you just want to express yourself, or do you want to work with other people?
Exactly.
And if you just want to like, oh, well, that sounds like how I feel. Cool. Done.
Yeah.
Then, and if you can do that without help, then fine.
Yeah.
Then you don't need them. Cool, man. Don't need it.
That's all you need.
Right.
To be able to do that to your own edification.
Right. But when it comes to, well, do you want to make music with other people? Do you want to help them make their music? Now you have to have a shared language.
Yeah.
Because I imagine that's probably where the real, you know, what really separates. It's like, can you come in as a programmer to work on someone else's project?
Yeah.
And that's probably like where it's like, oh, well, if you can do that, then you're real.
Yeah.
You know, real, whatever that means. Professional, whatever. I don't know what word to use.
Professional is a good way to say it, because like there are styles that you need to adhere to that some people go by, and there are
right conventions, stylistic conventions.
Yes.
Right, and I mean that's the exact same stuff that I'm going through because I have a big band gig tomorrow. And that's the same exact sort of thing. Is that, you know, for something to say shuffle, and then to have all these random ensemble hits and markings on it, and for me to contextually know what I should or should not play and what's going to be stylistically appropriate for the big band idiom, for the subset of that style, you know, while I'm playing a shuffle in a big band, you know, because if you're playing a shuffle with like a bass player and a guitar player or a small group, it's, you know, there's different things that are going to feel appropriate. But when you're doing that in the sense of you know, well, you got like 5 trumpets and 4 trombones and 5 saxes, and you know, there's different things you need to consider.
Yeah.
And that's really where, you know, having that shared language and all that contextual knowledge, right? Because lots of people can fucking play a shuffle. You can look up a fucking 1,000 videos right now on YouTube on how to play a shuffle.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
But you're not going to be able to find a video that says whenever the ensemble rhythm is, but you know, like da ba ga ga inside of a shuffle in a big band, what is an appropriate? What is the appropriate drum fill for you to play on beats 3 and 4 after those last 2 hits?
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to like that. Only comes from the contextual knowledge of having listened to those styles and being able to use your ears and your musical awareness and intelligence to like fill it in, and to also be able to shift these things depending on how the group feels.
Yeah.
Because if the bassist plays a little different, then I need to play different, and you know, to like, well, what needs to be done to make this group work?
Right.
Fuck what's written on this page. What's, you know, I know this says samba, but, or this says this, or this says that. That technically means this, but this will work better for this situation.
Again, it's contextual, just at a different contextual a different context. But that adaptability is like tremendous.
Right. And that all comes from language, or, like a bigger vocabulary.
A vocabulary and then experience, right?
Yeah.
To sort of bring all that to bear.
Right. And I don't know if I wouldn't be able to have those. There's no, and I guess like that's the thing too. Maybe that's sort of like my hang up is that there's no way I would have been able to have the experiences I needed without going to college. Because I wouldn't have been exposed to enough people to have those opportunities to play this music and to play it badly. And to learn from those situations had I not been thrown into that.
I mean, I imagine that's a difficult situation to find yourself in outside of.
It really is.
That college setting, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you could just be like a kid who's really, really interested in drums and somehow stumbles across a community big band,
Right. But that's like the one place.
Right.
In society.
And even then, if you were going to if you wanted to get good at it, you would have to really have a strong relationship with the drummer. And that drummer himself would need a really strong relationship with the band to be able to allow you to sit in and work, you know what I mean, and have those opportunities and stuff like that. And, that's just, I mean, yeah, if you have an incredible social network and people who are doing exactly what you want to do and they have the time to help you learn how to do it, then yeah, fuck college. Yeah, right. You don't need it.
If you're in that like specifically perfect situation, then fucking go for it.
Right? Yeah. I want to be a physicist. Well, my dad was a physicist. My mom's a physicist. My grandparents are physicists. My brother's a physicist. My cousins are physicists.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just go to work with them tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have to go to college.
Yeah.
Why doesn't everyone just do that?
Oh my gosh! You use a math handbook for integrals? Oh
man,
my god!
So when I meant to say, to bring it back around to that, when you mentioned an integral table,
yeah,
I like got mad. Because I remember we did have those in the back of the book.
Yeah.
Whatever, and we were able to use them on assignments, but not on exams, like you mentioned. And I came close to failing Cal 2. And at the time I wasn't sure why. I was just like, I must just be bad at this on some level, right? But over the years, looking back on it, I mean, this was like 2014, 2015. It wasn't that long ago. But I think I just didn't have enough time. I think if I had another semester of it, I would have got it down pat.
I did not. So...
Because I was taking 3 other courses at the time, like 4,000 level courses or whatever you want to say.
Sure.
Like top level course. It was my second to last or last semester before I graduated.
Oh, okay. Oh gosh, yeah, sure.
So it was towards the end there, and I was working at the time and all this other stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I only had the one semester to do it in, and it was only I think once, maybe twice a week. And looking back, I'm just like, man, if I had just had more time to deal with this, to like immerse myself in it, I think I could have gotten really good at that.
Yeah,
But it was hard as fuck the way that I did it.
Oh God, yeah. Well, there's no way to do Cal 2 in a way that's not hard as fuck.
Sure.
And also the way that course is taught too. It's kind of taught as a weed out course.
Yeah. Plus my professor sucked ass.
Oh God. Well, that's 3 strikes right there, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was sort of a solid. Because I got a physics degree and a math degree, and I got an A in every physics course that I took, because I was just really, really interested in it, and it just that stuff kind of clicked for me in high school, and I developed a profound interest in it.
Nice.
And so, but math was always hard.
Like an uphill battle.
Always. Math was a thing I did to be able to do the physics.
Right.
And I, at some point, got the idea in my head, like, oh, well, what's the hardest thing I can imagine doing? Oh, also getting a math degree. Well, I'll do that too.
Jump in the deep end. Here we
Simultaneously, the best and worst decision I've ever made. but I was a B, you know, like college algebra, B. Trigonometry, I got a C in trigonometry, which is funny because I am awesome at trig. I got to be awesome at trig, right?
Yeah.
Pre-cal, B. Cal 1, B. Cal 2, B. Cal 3, B. You know, differential equations, A. It took till differential equations for everything to click. Man. You know, so how, you know, that's like 4 years. I was like on my 4th year of college level math courses.
Right.
You know, before it all started to fall into place for me, you know.
Yeah.
And really on it, in a lot of ways, it took me that long to kind of, in a way, like unlearn the way that I was taught math at Dayton High School.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
because what I started to understand, because there's a difference between knowing what you're doing and being able to get the right answer most of the time.
Right. Because there are so many shortcuts and like rules.
Oh, well,
Not to say that math isn't rules, but you know, rules that you're given to solve the problems.
Yeah, all these heuristics and whatnot, you know.
Yes.
Whereas it's like, oh well, there's an example that's like this. Let me just one-to-one port this over. There you go.
Yeah.
But you don't really know why any of that worked. Right. And my like sort of the example that I use, I can't believe I'm fixing to do this, but here we go. All the time.
Bust out the whiteboard.
Yeah. I know there's paper somewhere.
Man, you have paper?
Dude,
I don't know that. Oh, no, I have a notebook somewhere.
But like the example that I use all the time, talk about this shit, is like dividing by fractions. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so like the difference between like 2 divided by 2/3, you know, versus 2/3 divided by 2 or shit like that.
Yeah.
Because most people, like even when I was at DiffyQ, I would just like, well, I'll try one way or the other, and I got a 50-50 chance of it being right. But you're doing it with these big algebraic equations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because not understanding that fractions are division, and so you're because that's the problem with math education, is that you're taught so many, you know, keep it, change it, flip it, or FOIL, or this or whatever, that it's hard to determine the difference between those things and things that are like actual, like fundamental. Like this does not change, right? And so one of those things is that fractions are division, and to, you know, when you're dividing by a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal.
Right.
And so that's like your fundamental thing. So if you port that over to this, then you never get it. You never get it wrong if you put it in those terms. This is a thing that I would teach kids when I was a professor. I would teach them this and emphasize this to them in the very first, when I would occasionally teach the rudimentary algebra, because there were 3 levels of like the transitional algebra courses, you know, the catch-up courses.
Yeah. Okay.
I forget what they were all called.
Like I think I went back when I went back to college. I took intermediate algebra.
Right. And that was like the last. That was the third
before
one.
college algebra.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. If you took intermediate algebra, then like.
Right, because it was like remedial or whatever it was called.
Whatever it was. Yeah. And so, but point is, at the very most fundamental one, you know what I mean? I would be teaching this concept. But yet, I did not really understand this concept until I was in motherfucking differential equations.
I still don't really understand the concept.
You know? Well, I just explain it to you.
Of why you do this.
What do you mean?
Why does multiplying by the reciprocal?
Oh.
I don't remember. Maybe I knew it at some point, but when you're doing that, I'm like, I know how to do that. I don't really know why I should be doing that. You know what I mean?
I probably have a good answer for it, but I haven't taught. I haven't professored in a while, so it's not
well, next time
at my fingertips.
We'll get the whiteboard in here next time and really get into it.
Right, but there was a lot of ambiguity there as far as like what is a that I was frustrated with when I was a professor, you know, and whatnot, because I was sort of understanding that, okay, well, sorry, I'm saying two things at the same time. When I was a student, understanding that, oh, I wasn't really taught what mathematics was in high school.
Right.
I was taught how to get the right answer.
Yep.
And that's not what math is about. That's not what mathematics is about.
Yep.
And so, and then also sort of realizing that, oh, because I fell in love with physics and mathematics, you know, because I saw them as beautiful. And to understand that I don't have a job. The reason I had a job as a math professor was not because society thinks that those disciplines are beautiful the way that I think they're beautiful and that they're valuable and useful to teach. The reason that I had a job as a math teacher at high school or as a math professor, was because this is an effective way to teach people how to follow instructions. And that's really useful in our post-industrial society.
Yeah. Bummer.
I was like, oh shit. You know, but bringing it back around to the, you know, when I really was able to sort of parse out these details when I was a professor and start to like understand that, okay, yeah, like it's really difficult when you're given so many. All right, like there's a difference between tricks and rules, you know, or fundamentals.
Yeah, fundamentals, yeah.
You know, like, no, this is fundamentally true. It is true now. It is always true. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if this equation changes. It doesn't matter if we go to the next chapter in the book. Because I remember that's how I felt, you know, like learning mathematics. It always felt like, all right, okay, well, how do I do these?
Right.
Oh, okay, this is...
You need to learn new tricks to be able to get these to work.
Okay, chapter 7. Well, how do I do these? You know, and
yeah.
You don't. It was hard to know. Like, oh no. This thing I'm telling you right now is capital T true, always true. You know. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. Mathcast.
I dig it. I don't give a fuck who else does.
That's a good approach. Yeah, I guess that's probably a good segue. I mean not segue, but I don't know, man. There's not a segue there.
There's not really a segue there. That was just interesting talking. And then I'm looking at these CDs over here.
These CD, yeah. Yeah, you know, variables, AB. Oh, here I got a segue. So in many ways, it feels as though the world is burning down around us.
And
your
eyes are burning.
Yeah, perhaps your eyes are burning, and perhaps even Robb Flynn felt similarly living in California amidst the LA riots and whatnot when he wrote the record "Burn My Eyes." You know.
That cover's so goofy.
And real eyes, and all these things.
I really like that phrase, that title.
It's amazing.
It's so clever.
It's great.
It's so good.
I've read a thing about it, and he said that he saw it like graffitied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like a classic graffiti.
Yeah.
That's really good.
So anyway, what we had, but yeah. So. Yeah, I don't really want to talk about current events because it depresses me and makes me feel hopeless for the future, and I don't really have a
That's where we're at.
I have a lot of feelings about it, but I don't feel like I can articulate them in a useful way. But yeah, more abortion stuff, formula shortage. You know.
Yeah.
Racially motivated terrorist. White terrorist in Buffalo. That shit's real. Like there's a precedent for that stuff. Yeah. And people aren't being held accountable for for the bullshit that they're putting out in the world.
Nope.
And
Well, I mean, you know what they say.
the more things change, the more they stay the same. So, but anyway, I just want to comment on that because I would feel kind of irresponsible if I didn't, but I don't have my thoughts organized well enough to say anything. Maybe
Well,
I will at some point.
Number one, I hope people don't come to this podcast for current events news. For two reasons. Number one, we are not experts. Number two, this isn't going to come out for like 3 more months.
That might not be true.
Okay. All right. Well,
you're like, I challenge you.
I might be shocked.
Richard.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, if we just need to have more people cancel, and we'll get there real soon.
You know who you are.
You know who you are. Yeah.
So yeah.
So
So
okay, cool, man. Fucking Machine Head, right? Burn my eyes. So we're gonna talk about. It's gonna be Machine Head. We're gonna try to talk about Machine Head here in the month of May.
As much as we can squeeze in.
Yeah, as much as we can squeeze in. So Machine Head is one of both of our like favorite bands. I feel like that's objectively true.
Machine Head is probably my favorite band that I really don't care about like half of their catalog.
Interesting.
All that much.
But the half that you do care about.
I could kind of do with or without it.
Okay.
Let's say.
I see.
But the half that I do care about is like some of my favorite music.
Gotcha.
Period.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I guess maybe the way to say it is it is one of the favorite bands that we share.
Yeah.
That carried on past sort of high school, college, on into adulthood.
Yeah.
You know,
I think they might be the band that I've seen the most also.
Because I've drug your ass to their concerts the most.
I mean, I went willingly. It's not getting twisted.
I
fucking love seeing Machine Head.
Yeah.
Even if they play 5 songs, it's still like 45 minutes and it's amazing. It's like
so do you remember when we saw up in Dallas?
Mm-hmm.
And they were playing. I was so because this was when The Blackening was about to come out, and so they were not. They were on their way back up. They were going back up the chain after having fallen, so to speak, and so they were playing before Trivium. Like what a man. That lineup of that concert makes no sense right now.
Machine Head, Trivium, Lamb of God.
Do you know who opened?
I don't remember.
Gojira.
Did we miss them?
No, we did not.
Okay.
Because we saw them and I was like,
man.
Yeah, I was like, that band is fucking good. And I was like, we're gonna do that. You know.
What year was that?
It was
2007?
It was 06 or 07.
Okay. That feels about right.
Yeah.
The Blackening was about to come out, so
that was 07, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so like sorry. But yeah, so Machine Head played like a 30-minute set or some shit like that. Maybe like a 25-minute set.
I think it was probably closer to 25.
So they open with like Clenching the Fist of Dissent, which is like a 10-minute song that no one has ever heard.
Yeah.
And like then they played like Aesthetics of Hate, and then I think they played Old, and like
I want to say they play Halo.
They definitely did not play Halo.
Okay.
Because they like hated recording that song. It was such a pain to record it and get it around the blank. They're like, we're never playing that song ever again. And then it turned out people really loved it.
Yeah.
And they started playing it when they did the tour with.
Like I know I've heard him play it a number of times.
Oh yeah. Now they close their shows with it.
Yeah. Okay.
But man, that set list. But the point is that set was really short. They might have.
It was extremely short, tight, but like sprawling.
Somehow,
Yeah.
right? I want to say they had Imperium in there too.
Maybe.
I don't know, but we'll double check it when we get to that era.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just beside myself that they played before Trivium. I was angry.
Yeah.
At the time. So
I mean, at the time, I was probably also like fuck Trivium to some extent because I never liked Trivium.
me neither, but I like Matt Heafy. He seems like a nice guy. He seems like a
Yeah.
cool dude.
Yeah.
So
I got nothing to say bad about Trivium.
same.
So
I think the reason I had a chip on my shoulder against them is because Roadrunner was real excited about him.
I remember them being extremely hyped up
Yeah.
as like the next big metal thing.
Right. And I remember seeing an interview that he was like, well, the first Pantera record I heard was 101 Proof. And I was like, ha! Ha! Why am I paying to see you?
But what's his favorite song? Where You Come From?
Oh.
So we got a winner
good.
on our hands.
Then we're good.
I'm backing that horse.
So, but yeah, we've seen Machine Head just the Machine Head shows we've seen
Together
is
like 4 or 5 probably.
okay. So all
Maybe
right,
more.
here we go.
If you know it, I don't fucking.
So there was that. Then I saw them with opening for Heaven and Hell and Megadeth. I don't think you were at that one.
No.
Then I saw them at the Meridian, co-headlining with Arch Enemy.
I was there for that one.
Okay, you were there for that one. Then Mayhem Festival.
I was there for that one.
You were there for that one. I think that was 2009, 10, somewhere in there.
And so then Dallas.
Well, that was the first one.
Oh, that was the first one.
That was the first one. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then then I saw them like at House of Blues with Death Clock and House of Blues with Suicide Silence.
Damn.
That's a little vague. And then I saw them at Fitzgerald's. That was the first time they did the Evening With. And that was one of the most amazing shows I've ever seen.
Me, you, and Jet?
Yeah. That show
was a fucking awesome show.
That was, oh my God.
They played upstairs and it was so packed.
And it was so amazing.
Yeah, it was really good.
And then I saw them at House of Blues again for the first leg of the Evening With tour for Catharsis. And then you and me and Jet went to Austin to see them for like the last ride of like Phil and Dave.
The last ride of Phil and Dave.
Yeah. And then I saw them again when they did the Burn My Eyes reunion tour.
Oh yeah.
So I guess I've seen them 10 times. And I think that you were.
So I guess I've seen 5 or 6 of those.
Yeah, I think you were at like 6 or 7 of those.
Okay. Definitely the band I've seen the most then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And every single show was fantastic. There was never a bad.
Oh God, yeah.
Never a bad moment in those shows.
So, which of these 2 records did you hear first?
Burn My Eyes.
Okay, I heard The More Things Change first.
That was what I thought. I remember that being the case.
And so this is it's really interesting and difficult, my sort of how all my opinions about this are all mixed up.
Okay.
You know. So when did you first hear this record?
I want to say that I've mentioned before here where there were times when I would like borrow albums from my uncles because one of my uncles had a huge CD collection, tons of metal that I was always very interested in, and I think this is one of the ones that I borrowed at some point. So maybe like mid 90s, like probably pretty soon after it came out.
Okay, wow.
Maybe not too long, maybe like mid to late 90s, something like that.
Okay, wow.
So yeah.
So way before you heard Machine Head way before I did. Then.
I definitely heard this before the Burning Red was a thing.
Okay.
Because like when that single came, whatever. Anyway, whenever that album was coming out, I knew who Machine Head was.
Sure.
So
sure.
Yeah.
I bought The More Things Change when it was new. So
97. Okay.
97. And so
yes, I just looked at it.
And so I bought this when it came out, like within a few weeks of it coming out, you know, because I don't know, I saw ads and I was like, oh well, I hear about this band all the time, I need to check them out. Oh fuck it, I'll buy this record. And I bought it, and this record was life changing. 10 Ton Hammer, just that song itself, that was like, oh, I'm a different person now. I have a whole different set of values. And so Man, this is I don't know where to start. Right? Okay. Fuck. It's so difficult.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not pertinent yet, but earlier today you asked me to listen to a few songs.
Yes.
Is that pertinent now, or would you like to? Because I don't know why you asked me to listen to these songs.
Okay. So.
Or you want to dig into that later?
All right. Okay. I think this is what I want to say in general at first.
Okay.
Because I want to put these in sort of my experience, and probably how maybe a lot of people our age experienced Machine Head, or I don't know, or whatever. Fuck it. I don't know how everyone else did, but I can tell you how I experienced
Okay.
it. So I heard I heard this record, The More Things Change. I think that makes me a bit of a weirdo because I think most people heard Burn My Eyes first, and most people judge The More Things Change as how it compares to Burn My Eyes.
I do.
And I do the opposite.
Okay.
And
that makes sense.
And so, whereas, I think the reason that The More Things Change was so special to me was because it was groovy as hell. It was aggressive. It had double bass in it. That there were really good songs. Okay, like there was good songwriting. There was melody. There was hooks. And it still used enough of that like traditional metal vocabulary and everything, but it still was like groovy enough to where it's still like it still felt like new metal in a lot of ways. Like it was groove, you know what I mean? So it just felt like, oh, this is the heaviest new metal.
Yeah, because I mean, they in the same way that Pantera sort of defined metal in a certain way, so did Machine Head.
In the 90s, yeah.
For years to come.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And so, and there's like such a, I'm going to be repeating myself, but fuck it, man. It's here. It's what we're doing. There was like such a fury and an intensity on this record.
Interesting.
That to me, like Burn My Eyes would felt like a sterile version of The More Things Change.
Yo, I'm about to. Well, I was gonna put my leg up, but I kicked the chair out from under myself. I could not have an exact opposite opinion any more than I do.
How funny.
Yeah, this Burn My Eyes is full of energy that this album completely lacks.
Oh my god.
There's absolutely I mean, I'm not gonna talk shit on this album because I like it, but compared to Burn My Eyes, it is. I could easily just leave this and take.
Oh
this.
My god.
Yep.
The
most divisive conversation yet.
we have never been more at odds. Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, but yeah, like so that was what I wanted to establish that reference frame because I got Burn My Eyes after this.
Right.
And it's never a record that I disliked.
Right.
You know what I mean? I've always liked it. I've known the songs on it for, cuz I listened to the fuck out of it. I've even when I got it and not to cuz I was like this is amazing. Give me more. Right? So I listened to this, but I don't have the relationship with Burn My Eyes that I have with The More Things Change.
Do you think that's more of a nostalgia thing or just?
It might be like, it might just be that this hit me so early that I just like took it as it is. And it's like,
it's just like so formative that.
Right. Or it just might, I don't know, man. This
might just be for you more than the other one is.
It just, there's some special shit on here that really does it for me. But like when I go back and but yeah, but anyway, so I just want to make clear, like I never like thought Burn My Eyes was a bad record or anything like that.
Yeah,
I always thought it was amazing, but I never had the emotional connection with it.
Yeah, it just never hit you in the same way as More Things Change.
Well, and I wonder if it's part of the lyrics too, because I really feel a lot of the lyrics on The More Things Change that I don't. I think the lyrics on both of these are amazing, but the lyrics on Burn My Eyes are not as personal.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but like, there's stuff on here that is a little more personal. That like that it was just I really related to this record, you know.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so the reason, so okay, this is going to be a way tangent. Okay.
Let's go.
Because Machine Head is such an interesting band because they really straddle the sort of old guard of thrash metal and new metal.
Yeah, so they came up in the like late 80s, early 90s in San Francisco,
right,
Bay Area thrash metal scene.
In Violence, yeah. So Phil and Robb both played in Violence. Phil wouldn't join Machine until like 2003 with Through the Ashes, but Robb came up in that, you know, in that thrash metal scene, you know, going to see Metallica and Slayer and Death Angel and Testament at Ruthie's Inn.
Yeah, when they were like local acts, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. And so to kind of put some of these things in perspective, I went and I looked up a bunch of, you know, prominent metal rock stars' ages.
Okay, yeah.
To sort of
yes,
relate these things, right? Because you think about like these generations, right? And you think about like, okay, well, Metallica was famous. Their first record's in '83, and they're touring the world and doing their stuff. You know, Machine Head's record debut record isn't until 11 years after that.
Right.
You know, Pantera's major release is 7 years after that. So Metallica those guys must be like 10 years older than all those guys, right? You know? So,
one would think.
And then so here's some interesting things. So like, I'm just going to like give you like I'm not going to like list off the ages, right? Okay. But so like, I was like, okay, well, Robb, Dave McClain, John Davis, Fred Durst, Rob Zombie, James Hetfield, Dimebag, Vinny, Phil, Corey Taylor, Clown, Randy Blythe, Gene Hoglan, Dino, and Carl Sanders. Carl Sanders is the guitarist in Nile.
Okay.
That's like I was just curious, so that one's in there too.
Like Colonel Sanders?
Yeah, I know. That's what everyone
Carl
says.
Sanders. Okay, gotcha.
So here's some interesting things, okay? Fred Durst, Jonathan Davis, and Randy Blythe are all the same age.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Which feels
pretty weird.
Pretty weird, because Lamb of God wasn't famous until like a decade after those guys were.
Yeah.
Right? But that means that like Jonathan Davis and Fred Durst were like in their early 20s when shit was popping off for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Phil, Clown, Sean Crahan from Slipknot, and Robb Flynn are almost the same age. All three of those dudes. Okay. So Phil is like 53. Robb is 54. So Robb Flynn's actually older than Phil Anselmo. Which to me feels like a little bit counter, and it's like, wait, what do you mean? You know?
On the one hand, I like knowing when they put out their music, I guess so, but like somehow Phil always felt like more immature, like more of a child than Robb Flynn ever did to me.
That's fair.
Not necessarily like like he acted like a child or whatever, but Robb Flynn always just felt like
a man,
an older dude somehow.
I mean, but you probably didn't feel that way in fucking 1990. You know, when you like
know Robb Flynn's name in 1990.
I didn't know, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, okay, and here's two more sort of interesting things. Okay. Rob Zombie, James Hetfield, Vinnie Paul, and Carl Sanders are all the same age.
Say that again.
So Rob Zombie and James Hetfield and Vinnie Paul and Carl Sanders are all the same age. All those motherfuckers, well, you know, rest his soul, would be, you know, 58.
Right.
Okay. Vinnie Paul and James Hetfield were the same fucking age. Wow. And Rob Zombie.
Right.
Isn't that weird?
It feels bad.
Isn't that interesting?
That doesn't make me feel any older. That just feels wrong and bad.
And here's another interesting one.
But I mean, yeah. So Metallica got famous when they were like 18, 19.
Yeah.
When James and Lars were
Yeah.
super young.
Right. And Dimebag and Dino are the same age.
Okay. That's fine.
Right.
That feels all right.
But then like, and again, to like put this in perspective though, okay? So James Hetfield's 58, Dimebag would be 56. So they're super close.
Yeah.
In age. And Robb is 54. So like Robb is only 4 years younger than James Hetfield, but his debut record that we know him for, right, that he is still associated with, came out 11 years later.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, like, I feel like that's something really interesting that sort of really highlights, you know, how different, you know, like how unique Machine Head is in all this, because it's a lot of times you think of Machine Head as contemporaries with Korn, because Korn's debut record came out in 94 also. But those guys were young, you know, like 3 years younger.
I mean, you say that, but like those do not live next to each other in my head.
But they did in the 90s.
But they did. They absolutely did.
They did in the 90s. They don't now because of the second movement of Machine Head's career.
One of the weirdest things to be, well, we'll get to more of this in a little while, but a weird thing to me about Burn My Eyes is that it feels like it should have come out earlier than it did. It feels like an album. Every time I think about this album, I'm like, it came out in 92. Of course it did. But no, it came out in 94. It was recorded in 93. A full year almost before it came out.
Oh, okay.
Which I didn't know until like the other day.
I didn't know that until now.
So everything they did on here, they did in like 93.
That's amazing.
But talking about like where the fact that Robb Flynn was older than you might expect when they did this album, and some of these guys on here probably had a lot more of experience, I think that shows.
Absolutely.
Like, one of the things that I want to say about this album, I've listened to it a few times over the last few days, and I've listened to this album so many times over the years, but one of the things that stuck, I haven't listened to it in a little while. One of the things that really jumped out at me was this album to me feels like it was 10, 15 years ahead of its time.
It's objectively one of the best metal records ever made. And
but like the production and like how confident they sounded and the things that they were doing, like this does not sound like it came out in 1994 to me.
I think it's like we mentioned this in the podcast where we talked about Pink Floyd, right, with Shay, and he talked about like electronic drums and stuff sounding dated.
Right.
And I was like, what makes something sound dated is if people stop doing it. This album defined modern metal production.
It really did. It could have come out the other day.
Yeah.
For all I care.
And people be like, this is an amazing sounding record.
It sounds so good.
It has triggered kick drums. It has triggered kicks. Okay.
Right.
Which I've heard Robb talk about like that took like 3 days to get the trigger working right. Like
wow.
I don't know if that's exactly it, but some crazy shit. Like it took an inordinate amount of time.
It was a problem.
That
had to be solved.
To solve. Yeah, okay. Yes. And you know, for instance, you know, but like this is, and I feel like this record in so many ways is so you have Vulgar Display of Power, right? Which is, I feel like the first like gauntlet throwdown of modern metal production, right?
Yes.
But how the fuck are you gonna make a record sound like that if you're not Dime, Vinny, Rex, and Phil?
Right.
How the fuck are you gonna do that? Because no one is Dime, Vinny, Fex, Dime,
Fex and Rill.
Yeah, Fex and Rill. No one is those guys. No one plays how those guys play. And again, why does no one play how those guys play? Because no one has the vocabulary they have because they're fucking older and weirder trying to find their voice in this music in this time. Vinny doesn't have a death metal drumming skill set. He didn't grow up listening to Dave Lombardo. He grew up listening to Tommy Aldridge.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that he makes heavy and crazy happen is literally different than how every other fucking metal drummer does it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Dimebag didn't grow up listening to Kerry King. He grew up listening to like Eddie Van Halen and Ace Frehley, and then like is on the same path, the same like parallel path that James had, that the whole thrash movement is along,
Right.
but he's along it like independently in Dallas on his own, having this whole other different parallel path that ends up, that like doesn't pop up until 10 years down the road.
Right.
You know? So you can't, it doesn't matter how amazing Vulgar is. No one else can fucking replicate that. But this though, this is like the everyman's production Bible. You know, like the everyman metal musician production Bible. I'm like, you can achieve this.
It really is.
You know.
Yeah, like the sound of this record is the sound of metal going forward. A decade and a half.
Absolutely. And I've heard people talk about, like, you know, when they would be mixing records in like the 90s, like the mid 90s, like, you know, on forward, that Burma Eyes and Vulgar were the two. Those were their two comparisons.
Man.
Like, all right, well, okay, this is our mix. Okay, well, all right, let's compare it to Burma Eyes. Let's compare it to Vulgar. You know what I mean?
Doesn't sound quite right. All right, turn up the Burn My Eyes fader some more. Not quite there. Turn up the Vulgar fader a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like those were the two sort of, and I think especially this one, because I think this is sonically a better sounding record than Vulgar. I think
so
it's
too.
more full.
I think so too.
You know,
yeah, across, that's the thing. Across the board, like Vulgar is an amazing Pantera record, amazing sounding Pantera record.
Right.
Pantera sounds amazing on that record.
Right.
But metal sounds amazing on this album. So, like,
that's the end of the show.
like there are so many different things that are done that are being done on here that so many other bands do going forward.
Right.
But like one of the craziest things that shines through on the production of this album is experience. Like they do things here that, like, I know they didn't invent a lot of shit for this.
What do you mean?
It seems like they brought a lot of things together to make it work.
Fair enough.
In a certain way. Like, I don't, because Colin Richardson produced this. I don't think that he or Machine Head were like studio avant-garde wizards and somehow like willed this weird magic into being. I think they just knew what the fuck they were doing with the band that they had to make it sound really good. But the way that they did it was in such a way that, like you said, it was like an everyman's metal. It was like a way that can be replicated. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't invent a new way to record for this.
Right. It wasn't like what are you talking about? What's your boy? Boston. That guy.
Yeah, Tom Schultz. Like,
yeah.
Wiring his own pedals to get the sounds he wants.
Right. It was not that.
Right, exactly.
It was not that. And I, you know, and I think that there is, I didn't dig into it, but I think like when you look, there's some really interesting things in Colin Richardson's, you know, his credentials leading up to this and the things that he had done. And so, and I'm not exactly sure what the confluence of factors were.
Yeah.
But so, and then another big aspect too, I think, is that, you know, Robb had already recorded 2 full-length records and been in a band and toured.
Right.
You know, 2 full-length records and an EP with Violence.
Right.
And so there's a lot of experience there.
Yeah, like I get the impression they came in knowing what they wanted. Sure. In a lot of cases.
Sure. And so something that, like, because I remember when we, like, that experience of hearing, like, Through the Ashes of Empires and, like, hearing, like, Imperium for the first time, and you're like, holy fuck, like, Robb can riff?
Dude, that was
You
like
know?
a whole other dimension opened up when
Right.
that song fucking happens.
And or then like, and especially like the blackening here, like aesthetics of hate and all sorts. I was like I didn't know these guys. I didn't know Robb could do this. And this is what's fascinating to me. He's been able to do that. He had been able to do that shit for at least for 20 years at the time that we had heard that. Maybe not quite 20, but like since 88 when the first Violence record came out. Do you know what I mean? And so what that means is that the riffs on this record, the style of guitar playing on this record is a deliberate, creative decision
Right.
and the result of Robb's vision.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And that fucking wow.
Yeah, because like saying that it's like every man's metal is like a great way to say it, because it is simplified in a way, but it's streamlined and it's extremely effective.
A few years ago, I sat down with the tabs and like learned most of the guitar riffs on this record. I am not a guitar player.
It's not super technical.
Right.
Like
It's not.
you need to learn how to do natural harmonics, and that's kind of it. Like
do 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 do. You know what I mean? Like it's, but it's all like so groovy and so powerful and so effective. And knowing that Robb is like choosing to play, you know, do 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 when he can go and like, and he's got all those Exodus fucking chops.
Right.
You know, man, because goddamn, fuck that guitar playing. Jesus Christ. Gary Holt. Fucking shit. And so like that is, I don't know, man. It says so much to me about how clear the vision was. And I don't know where the lines blur between that being Robb's vision and that being the shared vision of the other guys in the band.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You probably ask the four of them and you probably get four different answers.
Probably. I would, if I had to bet, I would say that it's safe to say that Robb had a outsized influence in that, but who knows?
Right. So that's sort of, that's a good place to sort of. So I sent you some songs today.
Okay.
To listen to.
Yes. They were Refuse, Resist, and Territory by Sepultura, which are from Chaos AD. Yeah. Which was 92. And then there, okay, well, the title said 2, so I don't know.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then,
let me double check that. Okay. Go ahead.
And then there was, I don't remember the name of the songs from
Martyr and Scapegoat
from Soul of a New Machine by Fear Factory, which was also 92.
So I have it that,
or at least that's what the title said.
That Chaos AD was released in September 2nd, 1993.
Well, I'm going to believe that.
Okay.
So what about Soul of a New Machine?
That's 92.
Okay, that was 92.
Definitely 92.
Okay. So I don't know why you sent me these tracks in specific.
So
I had a takeaway from this.
So yeah, tell me what your takeaway
Maybe
was.
Extremely separate from what you were going to say.
Yeah, let's hear what that is.
It just puts into stark contrast even more how like out of time this album sounds.
Production wise.
Absolutely, because those kind of sound like shit in comparison to this.
Definitely.
They still sound cool for what they are.
Oh yeah.
But this sounds leagues ahead. Like this sounds so much fucking better than those.
Absolutely. And that's not what I was going to try and say.
Okay.
But that is definitely true.
That was my initial big takeaway.
Of course. So like my sort of armchair speculation is that Robb heard the production on Vulgar, like when it came out.
Okay.
In like February of 1992. Okay. And then in August of 92, he heard the riffing on Soul of a New Machine.
Okay.
And it was like, God damn it. Okay. Thrash is fucking dead. And then he hears like the riffage and like kind of the songwriting and some of the vibe on Chaos AD. And is like, all right, I need like these kind of grooves and these kind of riffs and that production
Okay.
to get like
Yeah.
Burn My Eyes. Because I feel like that, like, you know, cuckoo, goodbye, cuckoo, goodbye, cuckoo, cuckoo, like that you hear in like Scapegoat, I think is the song, the Fear Factory song, you know, but that kind of riffage and then like that, like that's, you definitely have that kind of riffage on, or that kind of like aesthetic in the guitar on Burn My Eyes. But I guess I guess Chaos ID is still in standard or maybe drop D.
Yeah, one of the two.
And then this record's in some weird ass tuning.
I think it's maybe like a step down, maybe a step and a half down.
Yeah, I think it's in like
Step and a half down, drop D probably. Because I think they play in drop at all times.
yeah. But then they like drop like they drop like another string. They do a really weird tuning. Like the G string or something. They drop it like a half step or something as
Maybe.
well.
I don't know.
There's some goof. It's some goof tuning that they do on this record.
Goof tunes.
But yeah, that's why I sent you those, because I feel like that's the real genius also of this record, is that it sort of it's genius in the elements that it combines, right?
Yeah.
So let me, motherfucker. I wrote so much. Let me try to.
And in terms of like thrash being dead, there is absolutely some thrash on here.
Yes.
And I think it's used extremely effectively, because something that happens on this album is about halfway through, a couple of songs start slowing down a bit more, and they get into some more drawn out,
like Death Church. And...
You got, I think Death Church and Race to Overcome. I think Death Church definitely, and then the first half of Nation on Fire. For sure. It's like you're sort of a lull, but it's kind of a groovy midpoint in the album, because it opens extremely strong, Davidian Old, Thousand Lies. And then you get to the end of Nation on Fire, and it's fucking balls to the wall.
Right.
And then into Blood for Blood, which is even more so.
Yeah.
Fucking incredible. Fucking incredible.
And so that is the thing, is that, the thing that makes the thing that's extremely unique about the first Machine Head record is that it somehow takes cues from hardcore, hip hop, thrash metal, and groove metal, but uses them to make something truly unique and authentic. It's almost as if they're not true influences on the sound, but they are informing the sound. So it's like, it's not like, it feels like it's an authentic, almost fusion record, in a sense, to where it's like, oh, well, that motherfucker has clearly learned Slayer, or has clearly listened to Slayer and clearly loves Slayer, but this doesn't sound like Slayer.
Right. They're not trying to play parts like their influences.
Right, but you can still like,
informed is a good.
Yeah. Like I kind of feel like that's how like the first Slipknot record was too. Like it didn't really sound like anyone else.
Right, but you could hear like, you guys probably know how to do other things than what you're doing.
Right. Oh, you like Morbid Angel, you know.
Yeah.
And shit, you know, shit like that. Like I bet you know all the words to some Pantera tracks off of Far Beyond Driven. You know, shit like that is sort of, you know, how I feel about it here, you know, and the and like this, just the guitar playing in general on Burn My Eyes, like we were saying, you know, because yeah. Anyway, no, I kind of already said that. But yeah, like I was saying earlier, like this idea that Robb made this deliberate decision to like write these groovy, simple riffs, you know, and not like when he had the chops to throw in all the crazy shit. And that is like so counter to how most metal music is written.
Yeah.
Like most metal music is like, well, man, what's the fucking hardest thing I can play? Like how can, because that's what makes it good. And so
Or there's like there's a perception that more is more extreme.
yeah, like more, right. And so for him or them or whatever to sort of have that clarity to sort of like, all right, that's not, I'm trying to say something else.
Yeah, like I think this record is very extreme, especially for the time, especially for 1994, but in a different way than you might traditionally think of extreme metal being extreme, and it's in the energy that it has. I think this album is like intensely energetic in a way that just most albums are not.
I don't disagree.
I think it's ridiculous in parts, like especially the ones that I outlined. Or like it starts off all right, and then there's a lull, and then it hits that fucking that third of the quarters of it basically,
Mm-hmm.
and it just punches you in the face over and over again. But throughout there's like an immediacy and just an undeniable energy to it that
Yeah,
I just love.
It's undeniable. It's absolutely undeniable.
But it's intense in a way that
For sure.
That's the sort of extreme I can get behind. I guess is what I'm saying.
I gotcha. Yeah.
So that does something for me.
Right. And it I guess another thing that's really fascinating to me too about this is that you sort of there's a big fork in the road with thrash metal, with the evolution of really metal or extreme metal or whatever you want to call it, metal that kids are listening to.
Okay.
Or of the day.
Kids bop metal.
Yeah, that happens there in like starts to happen in the 90s. And it sort of becomes codified in 94. And that's like, all right, well, does thrash, if you're, like, do you double down on like and go more extreme, and do you become death metal or black metal, or do you become groove metal?
Right.
And those are kind of incompatible at that time. Now you have bands like Gojira that are like, well, no, man, we're like grooving to death metal,
Right.
and whatnot.
Well, like at the time they were sort of like new things, so it was a bit, it was probably, I don't know, it was probably a bit more difficult to see them and integrate them. Whereas like we're gonna do this or we're gonna do this.
Well, and it's like, to me, like death metal is like, I mean, death metal in its traditional sense is a very like next logical step from thrash metal. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, Carl Sanders of Nile.
I keep thinking you're gonna say Carl Sagan. Pale Blue Nile.
Papa Carl of Nile.
Okay.
What, like he was in some like, thrash metal band all throughout the fucking, some like local thrash metal band doing all sorts of shit, and then gets involved in death metal and blah 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 blah, and so there's like a natural kind of trajectory that and whatnot, and so that like anyway, Machine Head or like Robb chose this way, you know what I mean? And I don't know, man. It's just an interesting thing because you were talking about things being extreme,
Yeah.
right? And like there are certainly, like earlier today I was listening to a lot of Suffocation 1991 Effigy of the Forgotten, extremely intense, extremely brutal, extreme record or whatever, especially for the time, blah 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 blah. But it's trying to do a very different thing than this is doing. Do you know what I mean? And so
I have a hard time when I say extreme, I have a very hard time quantifying what strikes me as being so intense and extreme about this
Mm-hmm.
versus something that is faster or plays more notes or screams louder.
Right. Or the lyrics are more
Oh,
intelligible, or it's more obtuse or more, yeah.
yeah, but like the only thing that I can say is like there's an energy to it that so many albums just don't have.
Yeah.
Despite being all of those other things, despite being faster and more and
For sure,
you know.
for sure. Yeah, there's an authenticity. There's like a magic in the bottle quality to this record. It almost sort of feels like, you have the right musicians at the right time with the right songs in the right studio with the right budget and and then the right label and the right A&R and then the right sort of cultural moment where people are ready to hear it.
Sure.
Because think about that too, man. You heard fucking Vulgar Display of Power in '92, and you're like, this is fucking the shit. And then you hear like Soul of Doom Machine, like, this is cool. And then you hear like, fucking Chaos AD, and you're like, this is cool. And then you hear Far Beyond Driven in like, early spring of fucking '94, and you're like, yes, like, another thing that touches that production level of Vulgar, right? But you don't have anything else until August. And this definitely you can put this toe to toe with Vulgar, Far Beyond Driven, and Burn My Eyes. Like, you can put those three in the same fucking conversation, same category. You know what I mean? It can, and I think that is what makes this such an amazing, monolithic, special record, is that as amazing of a guitar player as Robb Flynn is, as amazing of a songwriter and a vocalist, or as amazing of a guitar player as Logan Mader is, amazing of a bassist as Adam Duce is, amazing of a drummer as Chris Krontos is, they're not Dime, they're not Vinny, they're not Rex, they're not Phil. But this record, these songs can stand toe to toe. And that gave hope to the rest of us.
Right. Like it's almost tempting to say that they like just played to their strengths on here, but we know they had other strengths as well that they just weren't exercising on this.
Right.
It really seems like they just had a vision and executed on it like flawlessly.
Right. That's a layer that really has fascinated me the past few days, like, really, like, as I started listening to it and thinking about it and trying to put it in its historical context or whatever is and especially knowing where they would go.
Yeah.
And then because at the time I'm listening to this record like after I listened to Korn and White Zombie and Coal Chamber and Osmosis and Trendkill, and you know what I mean? It's mixed in all with that, So
true.
I didn't have that context, right? To sort of, it's like, oh, well, Robb Flynn was in a thrash metal band before this that you cannot find their records anywhere. So get fucked if you want to hear it, because it's the goddamn 90s. And you can't just find that shit.
It's not on Columbia House for you to somehow get free. So
Yep. And you've got a finite number of those.
Well,
depends on how many addresses you got. Like, how many grandmas?
Well, me and a bunch of friends may have sent like 10 orders of Columbia House to one person's house and gotten away with it completely. I got a lot of CDs from those halls.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think I did like 4 or 5 of them.
I mean, it did some to my place too, but my mom was like, yeah, that's cool. But then we sent them to someone else's house without their knowing it and got a lot more.
And so would you just like watch the house and like see when it would come and just steal the mail? Or
no, I mean, he lived there. He was in on it. Like,
oh, okay.
He was getting some too, but.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He was like, give me 2 for every 10.
Something like that, probably.
Just if you know a record's good, just give me a copy of it.
Like, surely people listening to this the 10 people listening to this don't fucking know what that is in some respect. So back in the day, there was BMG and Columbia House and probably some other one too, but they were essentially like they were distribution, right? I guess distribution channels where you could. The deal was you would find their flyers in magazines, and you could pick 12 CDs plus one that you actually paid for. You would buy a CD for full price, like $12 at the time, and you could pick 11 more to get for a penny each.
That's right.
Or free, or whatever the deal happened to be.
Whatever the catch was.
And they would send you these 12 CDs in a big cardboard box.
Oh, man.
And you had only paid for one. And the deal was you would buy more going forward. You would like subscribe to their service or some shit.
Right. Like you were going to buy one every month.
Yeah. But they sent you the 12 CDs. So you had them. So you didn't have to do shit after that, really.
Right.
And so if you were an asshole like us, you could just sign up under many different names and have like 10 of those boxes of 12 CDs each sent to someone's house.
Yeah, man.
And you just had a shit ton of CDs then.
Yeah.
With no repercussions, because they didn't come after you as far as I know. I'm not in jail. They never came after us.
I think there were some debt some debt collection notices that got sent to my mom's house.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe my grandma's house too.
That might have happened, and I never heard about it. I hope not, because the lady whose house it was very, very nice, and I hope she didn't get screwed for that.
So, but I don't I remember like getting griped out about it a few years later, but I don't remember my mom having to go to small claims court about it.
Sure.
So
yeah, I'm sure that happened so many times that they couldn't have possibly handled it. Maybe if it was these days where they had like resources to be able to do these things in a huge scale, maybe they could have done it, like with computers being what they are, internet being what it is. But it was through magazines back then.
Right. Yeah. So that was I kind of forget about that. Jump started all of our CD collections and our music experience.
I got so much more diverse music than I would otherwise have. Like, I can't even. I'd have to go back and look at all the music that I had if I even have a list of it somewhere. But like, the first like Frank Zappa album I had was from that shit.
No shit.
Like, that's how I discovered that. You know?
Wow.
All sorts of wild shit.
That would be That would be fascinating to know, right? Like, what were your BMG orders? What were your Columbia House orders?
I wish I could see. Oh man, I wish. But a lot of them were like other bands that I already had one of their albums, and I wanted this other one, you know, and it was just here, so why not? Right.
I know there was a bunch of like weird ones that I ended up in there that there's no way I would have ended up with it otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Like the REM record Monster, like I ended up with that one.
Oh wow!
Out of that,
I had the Monster cassette, but Out of Time, I got that CD from there.
That's funny.
Opposite. You were vice versa, yeah.
Opposite for me.
Nice.
Because my mom had the Out of Time cassette,
right?
You know, and I thought that she was the coolest person alive.
Not wrong.
Because
great album.
Yeah, like this might be a totally fabricated memory. I mentioned this on like the first podcast, I think.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing like REM play like Losing My Religion on like Saturday Night Live, and I was like, this is the coolest song ever. And she was like, well, I got the cassette right here. And I'm like, you're the coolest person alive. My mom is the best.
This is so good.
No one could ever be cooler than my mom. So
that's a pretty fucking awesome moment, honestly.
It was pretty great. Like, you know, and this is the thing, right? Like, even if that's not what happened, my mom subsequently was cool enough to where that seems plausible. So that tells you what you need to know.
There you go.
Love you, Mom. So okay, well, cool. Let's just. I have like a bunch of random track by track notes.
I didn't do any track by track notes for any of these.
Cool.
I started to do some notes. Like I started listening to Burn My Eyes and started to do some notes, but I was like, I don't have track by track thoughts really. It's just.
Well, cool.
I have very general feelings about both these albums.
Gotcha.
Well,
I'll start going through mine, and you just piggyback on.
Yeah.
If I don't, you know, and if I don't hit everything you had to say, then we'll come back around. So,
okay.
Davidian, I was like, this song is still just so damn heavy.
Yep.
Over the past few years, because this was one of the ones that I like really committed to learning, because it's at like 156 BPMs, which is just such a tricky tempo to do double bass at. So I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna really focus on this, right? Because it's
kind of a mid.
it is the mid of mids. Because like doing double bass at like 140 is like okay, doing bass at like 150 is like okay, doing double bass at like 170 is like okay, cool, cruise control, right? But like 156, it's like oh, and it's so hard to do, and it's so hard to do relaxed enough to make it groove the way that it does on this, right? Like, oh, that's very difficult.
I mean, I'll just that main riff is just so like simple, but just so good.
It's so good.
Just
Yeah. And yeah, it's like it's a weird tempo, super hard to play, it's tight as fuck, and has so much feel, it's ridiculous. Breakdown Kings, I said that.
yeah, somewhere on here, I forget what song it is, but they break down the breakdown. Oh, it's an old, I think.
Yeah. Or no, slow.
He just announces slow.
Yeah.
And then they do it. They go slower.
How like lame is that, and how crazy is it that it works?
It works and it's cool and it shouldn't be.
Yeah, like that should definitely not slow. That should not be cool. Can you like imagine if it's like if before like it's like an Angel of Death, you know, like before they go back into the solo section, like Tom Araya goes fast,
speed,
like right before the drums.
Yeah. Well, it just end up like fucking 101 proof, where it was Phil's announcing that shit from time to time.
That's fucking badass.
Yeah. On the lead guitar, son of a dime bag. Oh man. But that's a very specific. That works contextually in a very specific manner. But saying on your studio album slow, and then saying it slower the next time.
Yeah.
That shouldn't work.
It should not work. All right, so another fun fact about Davidian. So there's this king shit legendary metal drummer here in town named Dauber Beverly. Okay, so he currently plays in Necrofire. They're out on tour with like Danzig and Cradle of Filth. He's also in Oceans of Slumber, critically acclaimed modern metal band.
I like the name.
And then back in the day, or a few years ago, he played in a grindcore band called Insect Warfare, and they're like. You're like, you can look up top 10 grindcore albums right now. Period. And in every fucking list, and that Insect Warfare album's going to be in there. Fucking incredible, right?
Fucking for real.
Dude is legit beyond legit. And I remember seeing him play at like, he was playing at Fitzgerald's with, he was subbing in for like Brace for Nails. Or no, he was in Brace for Nails, but Sean from Insidious Discrepancy was sitting in on vocals. That's what was different, right. But anyway, just like the Houston, like he's just a pillar of like the Houston death metal scene or whatever, you know what I mean, and has been for like 20 years.
Okay,
deserves all of the absolutely deserves all the credit, and everything. Has a lot of like crazy fusion chops and shit, dude. Anyway, dude's just legit beyond legit.
Yeah.
Like spent a lot of time like learning like classical piano, like can play like fucking classical pieces on piano. Anyway, he's fucking rad ass dude. He talked to me when I was a fucking teenager. Took the time to fucking hang out with me. Made me feel cool. Like once, like 20 years ago. So
nice.
Anyway, he was a guitar player before he heard Davidian.
Damn.
So
that's all you got to say.
Yeah. I remember hearing in some random interview, you know, that like, oh yeah, I started playing drums when I heard Davidian. Or I mean maybe he had played a little before, whatever. You know, but he was like, all right, well, like fuck this.
That's what got you serious.
You know what I
I
mean?
mean, fair enough.
Because the drums really carry this fucking record. Like that's the thing too, and that's what makes. I think it's true to say about both these records, is that, because you could take these kind of riffs, and you could put them in like other nu metal bands. You know, like they could end up in like on a Coal Chamber record, or they could end up on whatever. You know what I mean? But this drumming though.
This drumming though.
On both of these, like you're not
Yeah.
gonna get, and that was what really separated them from the nu metal bands at the time, because you know, like as much as I love them, you weren't gonna hear like fucking Spineshank or whatever. You weren't even gonna hear like Mudvayne play drums like this. You know what I mean?
No, you really
That's a
weren't
little later. I shouldn't be comparing it. I should be comparing it more. I can't think of like, I don't know. I can't think of like, or Limp Bizkit.
I mean, you're not wrong. Like you wouldn't hear Spineshank or Mudvayne or Limp Bizkit play drums like this, but like there weren't a lot of. Nobody was really playing drums quite like this.
You know, like maybe Coal Chamber is the better example, because like Coal Chamber was like that kind of like heavy, right? You know, we have harsh vocals, an occasional like melodic-ish thing in the voice, but mostly harsh vocals. They're not like we're not like full on rapping like Limp Bizkit. We're not doing shroom prog like Mudvayne. You know, you're not doing like the or like the techno loop thing that Spineshank's doing or whatever. Like it's just drums, bass, and guitar and vocals. You know, but those kind of, you know, I'm not want to call them simple riffs. I'm gonna call them attainable riffs. But like that's attainable. But this drumming, not so much.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And you know, so
the groove is like the centerpiece of these first two albums, especially.
Right. And you really have to, yeah. I was like, I wrote this on about Rage to Overcome. I was like, no one crushes mid-tempo grooves like Machine Head, and mid-tempo groove crushing template perfected by Chris Kontos. So,
yep.
That's a thing I can't take away. As much as I love Dave McClain for everything he does throughout Machine Head's catalog.
Totally.
The whole range of it. You know,
because I don't think we said this is Chris Kontos, this is Dave McClain going forward.
Right. But man, Chris Kontos established a hell of a template.
Yes, he did.
For, you know, and so, man, goddamn, the drumming on this fucking record.
Like, I'm not a drummer. I don't listen to music for drums, like, by and large. That's just not what I'm there for. But, like, the things that I feel the most from this album, like the drums. Like, I can pick out a couple riffs here and there. Like, I know the riff to Davidian because I've heard it so many goddamn times. But, like, the feel of the song is front and center for me there. And it just kills it.
And it's so tight. And it's so... And, like, his drum parts feel really thoughtfully composed in a way, you know? Like there's hooks in there, you know, and whatnot. It's just so well put together. All right. Old. So there's an entrance, like one of those like old.
Yes.
You know, like at like 3:30.
It's the part where they all drop out and then it comes back in.
Yeah. At like 3:34, and it's like sloppy as fuck. Like it's like. It's like, I know there's only 4 people in the band, but I felt like I heard 6 entrances, you know?
Like 6 feet drop.
Yeah.
6 shoes drop there. Bro.
But I fucking love it. Because that's the thing, too, is it's like when everything around it is done so to like such a high level of precision that it's like, well, they meant that. that was on purpose, you know?
Like you could almost argue that because when they do that re-entrance there, they come in like what, like a seventh higher or something. It's not a fifth. It's not a fifth, but it's like
Okay.
because it's like they come in higher for sure.
Okay, I didn't pick up on that because I don't understand pitch. Let me see if we're talking about the same spot.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's a little higher.
Yeah, because normally he's like, oh, I can't fucking do the pitch. If you go back and listen to it though,
Okay.
it's noticeably higher pitch.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So it's almost like if they wanted it to feel more strained or maybe chaotic or something. So
I see.
I don't doubt that it was just here's what they got. I don't know. On the one hand,
And that's the thing.
on the one hand, the rest of this album is so fucking well done that it seems impossible that they would do that and let it go. But maybe they thought it felt good.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
And it does. So
and that's something I think that's something I'm gonna talk a little bit more about when we get to the More Things Change.
Okay.
Yeah. That concept, right? Yeah. Thousand Lies. I'm like, they're straight up rapping on this verse.
Yeah.
and then I talked about the slow thing.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
And then about that one, I was like, this might be the definitive early Machine Head song in a way. Like you hear thrash in here, you hear like the Pantera groove in here, you hear the hip hop in there, and you hear the hardcore is in there. Like it's all in there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, None But My Own. I was like, there's almost new level vibes to the riff at 213. Let's see what I was talking about.
Yeah.
You know,
For sure. Yeah. Very new level-ish.
Right. You know, so like things like that. Death Church. I think this is the song that got them signed actually by Monty Connor.
No kidding.
On the demo, I think Death Church was the one that like popped for him.
Huh.
I don't remember. These are just random things I've heard over like dozens, hundreds of random interviews and podcasts I've listened to over the past fucking decade. So,
that would surprise me, but yeah, okay. Also worth noting that we mentioned that this was a Roadrunner album. But this apparently was Roadrunner's best-selling album until Slipknot's self-titled came along. For 5 years. Best-selling debut. I'm sorry. Best-selling debut album.
Okay. Yes. Right. I was like Bloody Kisses.
Yeah.
But that was not a debut album.
Yeah.
Yes,
debut specifically.
Right. And those other two records that I mentioned to compare it to, Sepultura, Soul of the Machine,
also
Roadrunner.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
There's also a story about how Monty Connor almost signed Pantera.
Right. I've heard that. Yeah. Or maybe you told me about it. Yeah.
I did. But they
weird.
The guy who really ran, like the owner of Roadrunner, like had everyone sign this like crazy shitty deal, which was like, well, yeah, you have to make 17 records with us or something ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we own your merch. And he was like, it was like the pre 360 deal almost, you know? And Pantera was like, well, we're an amazing live band, so we're gonna need lots of tour support. And they're like, well, we're not gonna do that for you. We don't do that for anybody. And Monty was like, you need to do it for these guys, though. It was like, we don't do that for anybody.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, going to East West then.
Yeah. So what I said about and then the other thing I said about Death Church was I love the lyrics on this. It turns out the things I love about Robb have been there since the beginning. So, you know, that was the thing that really stuck out to me when I was looking at, because as much as I like know these records, especially the More Things Change, I haven't like, I sat with the lyrics with the More Things Change when I was a kid, but I haven't recently.
Yeah.
You know? And so, but like looking over the lyrics and whatnot, it's like, these are still so good.
Yeah. like we will. It'll become more clear to me later on when we get to the later albums. But like, so I don't listen to this album very much these days anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, if I listen to Machine Head, it's gonna be like Under the Locust, probably. Because over time that became like my go-to.
Yeah.
But like I really love fucking Through the Ashes. I really love Blackening, all this stuff. But like going back and like really listening to this a few times again, I was just like, this might just be my favorite of their albums. Despite all the different stuff they do, arguably better later on, there's just something about this album that just does it for me.
It will never be my favorite, but it might objectively be their best.
Oh man. Okay, that was like the exact opposite of what I'm saying, but I like it. I like it.
You know, and so what I appreciate a lot about the lyrics on this record is that it's, you know, like he's doing like socially conscious, like you know, like socio-political stuff. He's doing commentary. He's talking about like fucking religion and church and stuff being fucked up. He's talking about cults. He's talking about the riots. He's talking about extremism and racism and all this sort of stuff. I have a whole spiel when we get to Realize, but you know, but yeah, like, and so in a way, it's interesting to sort of pit him and you know, to like compare him and Anselmo, you know, is it's like, oh well, because that's really what outed Anselmo's racist stuff was Robb.
Yeah.
You know,
right.
Way later on, and it's like from like the aggro bro word salad, I'm gonna tell you how the world is thing. Like Robb has always been the more mature. Yeah, well, the only time that Phil really tried to do it was on Vulgar. You know what I mean? And here Robb does it in such a more like mature, sincere, and authentic way. Because that's the thing too, is like Robb fucking lives in California. You know, he's talking about shit that he knows about.
Yeah, like a lot of the thematic stuff, or some of the thematic stuff at least on this album was local to him.
Right, he was a goddamn meth dealer for years, and he himself was a goddamn drug dealer. You know what I mean? Like so there's a different sort of like maturity and evenness and authenticity to his commentary.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels more authentic. It feels thoughtful. It feels considered in a way that feels like a reaction.
Yeah, exactly. Like triggered white man shit, you know? Like some of the lyrics in Block are, you know, like white attack black, black attack back. The fucking media keeps us all blind. You know, and it's like that's really like it might be like the only metal record that doesn't that like explicitly does not shit on black people. You know what I mean? Because you know what I mean? Like,
I hope you're not right, but maybe.
I mean, like metal records either just don't fucking touch that, or they're just like everyone sucks, or like everyone sucks in their own way. You know, like.
Right.
Or what? I'm not racist. I hate everyone. Or you know what I mean? Or it's like that kind of thing.
It's like the inverse. No, it's not. It's the inverse all lives matter sort of thing, but not quite that.
It's on that spectrum, right?
It's just kind of the doing that backwards.
Yeah. It's
it's being misanthropic rather than like, you know what I mean? Like, it's
right. Right. And then to sort of just any kind of acknowledge of like, yeah, well, black people aren't getting a fair shake in a metal record.
Yeah.
You know, and so that sort of like brings up something else I wanted to sort of mention here about Realize, because that's sort of, you know, all about the LA riots and whatnot, which I think is something that is really difficult for us to understand, like the cultural impact of.
Yeah, it's weird because I remember, yeah, like we would have been like 10, 9, 10,
9.
right along in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it
it
was
was 92.
yeah,
So
yeah, like
um, I remember that being all over the place, but not really understanding what it was. You know?
yeah, yeah. I remember the OJ trial,
Oh yeah.
right? But I don't have a concept. I don't remember much of the LA riots, but I feel like there was a convergence of a lot of influence of a lot of things around there that affected the demographic that is chiefly responsible for listening to and making metal music, which is like working class white dudes. Okay. And so because you have like the popularity of gangster rap, so you have like more visible black culture and whatnot, which, as we have unfortunately learned historically, that's enough to trigger certain types of white dudes. Um, and then you have the LA riots that happen, which are happening in a very in a different place, right? Go ahead.
Right. Well, I was gonna say, like, I guess the thing really that I remember specifically more is just the Rodney King incident itself,
Mm-hmm.
which was very like, here's this thing that happened,
Right.
and I think maybe that was more simple. Like to your point, like that was more simple for people to grasp onto because it was a very obvious thing where like here was a fucked up thing that happened.
Right. But what I remember is all like, all my family and everyone talking about like, well, he this, he this, he this, he this, he deserved that. That's what
Sure,
I remember hearing
sure, sure,
all the
sure.
time.
But yeah, I'm saying like versus the riots themselves because that was like it's happening in L.A. Whereas you can at least personify, even as like a kid who doesn't really understand, you can go, oh, Rodney King's a guy, that's fucked up,
Right.
but not really understand why the riots are. Maybe I don't know. I
Sure.
can't remember very
Yeah.
well.
And so, but like you have like sort of like these like latent racist ideas, and you have like black culture becoming more visible because of the popularity of hip hop. It ain't just black people who's buying hip hop records. Sorry, guys. Like there was a lot of white people who got really excited about buying NWA and Tupac. Okay.
Uh huh. Yeah.
Otherwise, that shit wouldn't have been on display at the record stores that we went to. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so, um, but then like that reaction to the Rodney King, the Rodney King beatings, and specifically the violence of the LA Police Department, and people are imagining like that happening in their own community, and that's not an appropriate correlation to make. I've heard Henry Rollins talk about that, like that he grew up in DC,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, when I went out to LA, I was shocked the first time that someone told me to watch out for the police, that they might hurt me. He's like, well, what do you mean? Those are the cops. I thought they just like gave you directions and shit and helped you out if you needed it. And they're like, oh no, they'll club you. Don't fuck with the cops here. Stay the fuck away from them. Like the LA Police Department during that time was, that decade or whatever, was notoriously violent.
Right.
And different than other. I mean, that's the problem with all the Blue Lives Matter shit. Like,
A problem.
a problem. Sure, right? Yeah. Well, like the cops that I've like gotten into discussions with whenever I am criticizing shooting of unarmed black person X, is they're telling me about their experience on the job that they directly have had, and I'm like, I was like, but you haven't done this. You didn't kneel on, so you didn't shoot someone. You haven't done this. I am not criticizing or incriminating you. I'm talking about that officer. Why are you defending that officer from another city, from another precinct, from another state?
Mm-hmm.
And it's that like, we are what stands between order and chaos and all that bullshit.
Sure.
And so, but I guess like what I'm saying is that like whenever you are in that environment, okay, you know, a small town environment or whatever, and you look on the TV and you wrap a narrative around the violence and the destruction that you're seeing, the narrative that you wrap around it is these. What I heard is like, oh, well,
From the
these
people around you.
from the people
Yeah.
around me was things like, oh, you know, like these animals.
Mm-hmm.
These animals are destroying their own neighborhoods. You know,
Right.
like that's like the thing that you hear all the time. And so it just becomes like another for them, like just this other like justification, this other piece of data and you know, to sort of support their conclusion that they feel that black people are subhuman in some way or less valid culturally, less able to contribute to society in some way.
Yeah.
And they use the LA riots as sort of, you know, confirmation for that in some way. And here's a really terrible example. There's a death metal band called Malevolent Creation. Their first few albums are really, really good. Now they had an album that came out in 1995. Okay. So a few years after this. And I'll just I'm not going to read these lyrics. But well, I'll read a few. But like, so the song's called They Breed. Born into this world of filth, a plague in every city. The real world is not so real, filled with scum and lying thieves, threats of pain, claiming lives. When we owe you nothing, forced to live in fear forever, still they breed. Here's the important part. Always wanting, always taking what was never yours. Someday you will feel the hate that you gave to others. Okay? Filled with diseases, still they breed. Okay? So you get the idea, right? Okay, so at first it's like, not necessarily a big deal. Okay, but when you listen to the song, you know, the very end of it, you know, okay, last verse. Hate towards you and your kind, bad blood flows forever. My life is not complete until you've killed each other. Always gave to others. And then the last word, the last thing, which is not in the lyric sheet, okay, is F you effing N-words.
Wait.
Yes.
Because up until that point, you could kind of... There's a very clear line you can draw to... He's talking about black people, obviously. But you could also be like, well, maybe it's a more general thing. But...
It's a yeah.
You really spell it out there.
Up till that line, it's just like, oh, well, you're just like, because like death metal just talks about shitty things, so it's like, all right, yeah, sure, whatever.
Right,
maybe
you could see them taking that misanthropic bent on it, and just like people are the thing that is shitty.
Right.
But when you really hammer it home there, and be incredibly specific about your intentions,
right, or you know, like. My life is not complete until you've killed each other, you know, and it's like, so it's like, it's that black on black crime idea perpetuating.
Jesus,
and then right at the end,
Christ.
Yeah, man, it's startling. Because when I started to do like my sort of like death metal plunge, I got really into their first two records. Like, dude, this band is amazing. Let me listen to other stuff. And I listened to like their most recent record. I'm like, this is amazing. And then I'm like, why aren't these guys bigger? You know? Yeah.
When did that come out?
95.
1995, right? Yes.
Yeah. And so it's like, oh yeah, it turns out that like whenever you drop a hard N-word, you know, even on a death metal record, that turns out people don't want much to do with you anymore. And so,
Jesus.
But I'm just using that as an example of how, like, these things did show up in metal. These things, these ideas did manifest in the metal community. Right. And like, so Malevolent Creation may have been like here, but there's other things, you know what I mean, that didn't go as explicit, you know, things that I don't know about. You know, I'm not doing a dissertation here. I didn't do a full lit review and read all of the lyrics made by metal bands from 1993 1993 to 1996 or something. But
It's safe to say that there are more examples out there.
probably, at least there are people who held those views.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, if not as explicitly, like you said,
Like maybe it wasn't making its way into the art, but and so like for Robb,
I'll put money on there being more examples in the art.
fair enough. But so for like Robb to explicitly put the opposite view into the art, it's like fucking right on, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
So
thank you.
well, it just sort of like, it just kind of is like, oh yeah, well he was like always paying attention and always, he didn't like become woke the way that a lot of people wanted to criticize him and like, oh, Robb's just social justice warrior now.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, and I guess like that's the thing too, is it's like when people flip their shit on Burn My Eyes because there's rapping now, it's like, dude, the goddamn Burn My Eye, the Davidian video, he's walking around with pit bulls and cornrows. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They toured with Slayer, like on the Slayer Divine Intervention VHS. Robb Flynn comes out and plays the Venom song "Witching Hour" with him, and he looks like he has like a bandana, and he, like he looks like a fucking cholo.
He looks like the dude from Biohazard,
or he looks like home dude from Suicidal Tendencies. Who he looks like.
Oh, sure, that's a much better example.
But it's like it was there from the beginning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You fucking idiots. So, but yeah, okay. So then, like, our big old litmus ways to judge a record, right? Songwriting, killer, unique songs. You could have recorded this with trash production, and it still would have made an impact. I feel
probably. Yeah, the songs themselves are amazing, but boy, does the production like elevate it.
For sure.
It's crazy.
The production, God tier.
Like I can't stress enough how surprised I was to be like to get through this album once before I listened to it a couple more times and just be like, this could have come out anytime between 1994 and like 2010.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. It
like some albums feel timeless. This album just feels ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some timeless aspect to it, but it sounds amazing either way.
Yeah, absolutely. The performances. So this is where whereas like on like say like the Pantera records, where it's like, well, the way that Dime played, no one plays like that. No one's gonna play that song that way. No one's gonna phrase that vocal that way. Like on like Far Beyond Driven or whatever, like all those feel very like the performances are dialed up to 11, like the uniqueness of the performances. I don't feel like that is necessarily the case here. I feel like Chris Contos wrote like amazing drum parts. You know what I mean? But I don't know that like Chris Contos plays drums differently than anyone else plays drums. You know what I mean? I might be reaching here, or I might be like, maybe I'm just articulating this way just to sound like I'm being shitty. I guess, this is what I mean. Okay, this is what I mean. You take like what Vinny or Dime played, and even when the songs suck, that's still like, you just take what they played and you're like, that's still cool. This song sucks, but there's something that's still here, but just because, oh, well, that's interesting that Vinny did that way, right? Or that Dime did that way. If these songs sucked, if the composition of the parts sucked, like there's no, you know what I mean? Like there's not like these like fingerprint performance nuances of the players on here,
I don't agree strictly from a guitar perspective, I guess, because I can't think of another band before this that used for example, like their signature fucking natural harmonics, the way that they
Sure.
do, but not just like I did a harmonic here, but like weave it into the riff and have it it has an effect on the flow of the riff as well. And I think
Right.
I think that really works in a way that other people just didn't really do. I can't speak as much to the drum side of things, and the bass just isn't as
It's kind of not
front and center
not very present
as
on this.
you might think. So
Yeah, maybe I'm full of shit.
well, it could just be from that perspective that
Yeah, and it yeah. There's some compare and contrast. And yeah, lyrics great. A big step forward in aggressive metal lyrics, I feel. You know, steps away from the aggro word salad of vulgar, but still maintains the intensity.
yeah.
And then the influence of this record is monolithic. Like
Yeah,
maybe a bigger influence than vulgar, than really maybe one of the most influential metal records ever made.
I think you're probably right, and I didn't really appreciate that until now. I think it's pretty wild.
Yeah, like that. I mean, like, because there's like influential records, like, oh man, we all listen to that. We got inspired to make our own thing. And then there's
Every record sounded a lot like this for a
afterwards.
long time.
Yeah. And that's, yeah, like that's, and I guess like that's what makes the record so weird. And that maybe that's what makes me feel like I'm dialing down the importance of the performances, is because like maybe because the production is like, you could have played almost anything, and if it had this production on it, like the songs could have been garbage, but with this production, it still would have been like, well, God, we got to do that.
Might be the case, yeah.
I want.
Yeah.
There's probably some shitty record. There's probably some unknown record that has like this production that was released 6 months before by one band that only had one record. It's a small label or something like that. No one knew who they were. You know, they just didn't have promotion, or like the band broke up like on their first week of tour or something. You know,
Right.
like someone has some story. Someone's gonna, you know, but yeah.
Like I want to say something about I want to say something, but I don't know what to say exactly. But like specifically like the guitar playing on this album is like, I remember hearing it and like not really understanding how they were doing the things they were doing, because like some of the things just sounded so different to everything else. Like you listen to the Sepultura album, and it's just like very like
Sure.
and it's like it's pretty straight ahead. And even in Fear Factory, that early on was just like, here's some pretty fast stuff, and then a lot of like and like some groovy stuff.
Okay.
But the feel that they had here, mixed with like the weird use of natural harmonics in there, and a lot of really interesting melodic choices within a riff, and just the way that like the riffs on here honestly are like very new metal going forward. So besides even the production,
Yeah.
like the way that Davidian riff
Yeah.
is constructed is like how riffs kind of would be for a while.
I didn't really think about it until today, of like, oh my God, like no wonder Robb Flynn was miffed as a motherfucker whenever Slipknot was conquering the world. And,
yes.
you know,
Slipknot, a lot of Slipknot riffs are very this.
yeah.
So
Just like I'm just gonna hang out down here and have a cool groove and a cool rhythm,
yeah,
and something you can sing along to.
And
But we're all here on like 1 through 4.
yeah, like we're gonna be in drop D and we're gonna slide around to some cool melodic stuff, and like it happened here and there before, but like I feel like this codifies it in a way.
Yeah.
So yeah, to me this is like incredibly influential.
Yeah.
Even just in terms of the playing.
Right. Because I feel like new metal bands were like, well, let's do riffs like that. Well, we're a bunch of fucking 18-year-old kids, you know, or what, or like, you know, we're a bunch of fucking 15-year-old kids. We don't have a 30-year-old thrash metal drummer, or, you know, like a, you know what I mean? Like a guy, or like a guy who's like 26 and has been playing thrash metal in clubs for 10 years that can like play this fucking shit, you know,
Yeah.
on the drums. So, you know, we're going to back, you know, like if you can't do the 16 notes, I'm just doing with a hi-hat. Looking at you, Cold Chamber. So, all right.
Yep.
Let's dive into the more things change.
So this was 3
years later, Chris left. They got Dave McClain on the drums. So one of my favorite records of all time. There's so much grit, swagger, groove, and aggression on it. To me, there's a fury on this record that is intoxicating to me. This is Dave's first record with them, and he's got a totally different thing than Chris does.
Yeah.
I feel like there's more energy on the More Things Change. Chris is a lot more center of the beat, but Dave kind of swings in a different way. So the slower parts are like a little behind and dig in harder to me, and the fast parts push a little more.
Okay.
You know, it's not that they're technically faster; it's that like the phrasing is like more frantic on like the fast parts, like, you know, like on the More Things Change. You know, the song, right? Or that's not actually the name of the song. On the song Struck a Nerve.
I always think the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's the one where they say the more things change a lot.
They say the
Clearly
you
it's
know.
called that. No, it's not.
It's not. Whereas like the drumming on Burn My Eyes is amazing, but feels more sort of calculated and composed. Dave feels like he's just fucking going for it.
I agree with that. And for me with drumming, that tends to do it for me more, I guess, is what it comes down to.
And I think that's probably the big divergence.
Probably.
Is that I like on Burn My Eyes, I'm like, that is an incredibly well composed, tasteful, thoughtful drum part executed flawlessly with impeccable feel. You know? And then with Dave McClain, or with the More Things Change, I'm like, none of that should have stayed together and worked. Right. That is a guy holding on.
Just this like chaotic mass that they pushed onto the song somehow.
Right, and that they are going, but man, it works, and I love it 1,000 times 1,000. You know,
it's pretty fucking cool.
I think for me at the time, this record was so important because it was truly a middle ground, like we talked about, between like 80s thrash and 90s nu metal. Now knowing Robb's history, it's easy to see why that was. Because we had the Metallica records. We were listening to Metallica records. But we also had Korn and White Zombie and shit like that. And it's like, you know, like, why can't, you know, and like this was something that grooved the way that Korn did or White Zombie did or whatever, but still was like heavy the way that Metallica or Slayer was heavy, you know? The entire record is a clenched fist and stank face for me. Just
yeah. Yes.
So
totally agreed.
10 Ton Hammer, I'm like, this is one of the best metal songs ever written. Like, the bass tone. That's the thing. There's bass on this record.
There's a lot more bass on this album.
And it is amazing.
It's all over the fucking place. It sounds fantastic.
Yeah, just a bunch of this is just random thoughts. I didn't do a lot of timestamps or whatever, but like, you know, there's an urgency to this record. Like, it feels like nervous to me. You know,
that fucking blows me away because it's the exact opposite for me.
Man,
where like I'm just gonna say, like, very generally, this album feels slow and plodding to me versus the like rampant energy of this album.
What I will say, now maybe here's where we can find a middle ground on this. Okay, actually, let's hold that thought.
Okay,
because it will naturally come up. Let's hold that thought.
Okay. Gotcha.
Because I think I have a way to reconcile this.
Okay. You can bring these two divergent streams together.
I think so. Struck a Nerve, so Fury, that kick entrance before the second verse, you know, where it's like "Bagoon, gagoon, gagoon, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
just there's all sorts of like little things like that that you almost have the sense of like that just happened when they were recording it. You
Mm,
know what I mean? Also about the recording process with this, I think they had to like re-record the guitars on this like 3 times.
really?
There was some crazy bullshit about like the tone sucking or losing files, or there was some craziness that I remember hearing that was, you know, like you're gonna have to come down here and do it again.
Wow.
You know, so that's the other thing about this record too is, and that's maybe something that like what makes it fall a little flat probably to a lot of people.
It does to me. Like I don't like the way this guitar sounds, especially compared to this one, like by a lot.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I made sure to look. Like it's the same. It's still Colin Richardson on production. It's still the same engineer. So like everybody's
Right.
here, you know, except Dave McLean, obviously.
Right. Well,
But as guitar wise, like all the same players are here. So
right.
I didn't realize that there was a
the, the, there was some elements, some factors at play that made this a real pressure record. And I don't know if that was condensed time in the studio. Like you don't have as much time. Like you don't have much time to write it. You don't have much time to record it. You
Right.
don't have, or we've already had this tour booked for you, so you have to get it done by X. I don't know. There were some factors that really squeezed the time.
right.
So they did not have as much time to do this one.
Because
And
man, being 3 years after the fact, you would think that they would have like
but they had so much
They were-
success
they were
on
touring
this
so
that
much,
they
I
were
assume.
that they just put them out there
Yeah.
touring to death probably. And so and who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe a cat
Uh
pissed on the thing, you know.
hmm?
So maybe a cat pissed on their recording, you know. Could be anything.
So and then like the lyrics and struck a nerve, you know, courage to kill the pro-life. And I was like, how topical, Rob. Good job. Way to
Are you? What year is
Are you
this?
here?
Oh, shit.
Down to None. This is one of my favorite songs like ever.
It's fucking fantastic
It's
song.
so massive, you know.
Yes, like that. I say like slow and plodding, but really it just feels like chunky.
Yeah.
This album feels like thick.
yeah.
Like-
Yeah.
And that song especially. It's
Right.
just,
There's like it lacks kind of the sniper's focus that Burn My Eyes kind of has.
it does, and I love that so much about it. But like, this to me is just a different thing, and I like what it does. I prefer this, but like, this is also undeniable in a different way.
Right. So 424. Let's see what am I talking about?
You just put a timestamp.
Yeah.
No explanation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wait, so I was like, there are more. Like this album has some of the best, like switching from like normal, like halftime to double time to to regular. The best in the goddamn game is on this fucking record. So
Yeah, that's a great example.
and you know me, I when that happens and it happens right, like just I melt, man. Here's another interesting thing about this song, and this I think it might be another big factor for the record as a whole. So this song, like the first time that like the double bass comes in, you know, like when the song really starts, it's like 144-ish. Okay. When it ends, it's like 158. So I don't think this album was done to a click track. This one might have been.
Maybe so. Yeah.
And so the tempo and is like real, you know, is like, and the energy is real drifty on this one.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes some sense.
And even on like there was one song where there's like this halftime break, like there's this tempo change, and you know, and it's like, God, oh yeah, it's on Bay of Pigs, right? Yeah. Into the chorus on there, like there's a tempo change that is like, but it's like it actually it's doing halftime, but it slows it down slower than halftime and then speeds it back up after a few measures back to normal, like what would have normally just been halftime. And it's like, listen, that's like, dude, no wonder my tempo's been shit.
Because this was your
This is my
influence.
template. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Front lines. Goddamn these lyrics. This fucking outro. Spine. This, love the chorus. This record feels so pissed and I can't get enough of it.
It does feel like darkly angry at all times.
And the second verse, like kind of on Spine, still fucks with me. Let me see what the lyrics were on Spine. Yeah, life filled with deception, unwanted inception, wanted redemption for it all my love frustrated, pushed, alienated, wait for me to take the fall. My faith has waned because I feel the strain. In my eyes, it's all gone wrong. Well, rise above from this lack of love. It won't be long now. You fake it, mistake it, all that stuff. Like, and that's the thing. Like the lyrics on here are a lot. Like they hit. I mean, even still. Like they hit me as like a really vulnerable, sad, traumatized fucking young man, boy. Because that's what Robb was. You know what I mean? And he's starting to get more personal with the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's another reason that this record resonates with me more.
Right.
Bay of Pigs. I was like, lyrically, this is the first of many Robb historicisms where he's like, all right, Bay of Pigs, right? Is that about like the Cuban Missile Crisis? Not at all. It's about how cops suck. There's going to be a lot.
It's about one of two things.
There's going to be a lot of those in Machine Head's career.
We will come back to this theme.
But I'm always good for a Down Fuck the Police song. And like, yeah, this is the one that had that tempo change that I was talking about. Violate. Okay, so Violate might be, it's one of the most epic songs ever fucking made, to me. Like, so what I wrote was like, it's the most epic, like, a melodic song. Like it's not like there's not like a bunch of, there's not a bunch of melody in it.
Amelodic.
But it's still this just like sprawling, like it's like Neurosis. And it's just like this sprawling, just, filthy, epic, dirty, climactic opus to me. Like, and then the moment at like 5:20, I'm gonna have to. We're just gonna deal with this, and I'll have to deal with.
Like this really felt like.
Here we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm coming at you, YouTube.
Yeah.
So then we're gonna half time it. Then we're gonna double time it again. It's so like simple, and so, and then then we go for like the blasted out part or whatever. So like that, like 5:20, like that to 50, like that 30 seconds makes the entire record for me. When I hear that, it's hard for me to like not like just flip over any fucking table in sight and just like run through walls and shit like that. Like that whole song, that is the climax of the entire record for me.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that song like exemplifies how this record feels to me, but like in a good way. Like this is not the template they took going forward, but the same like the way you're describing sort of like a disjointed like epic feel, like a build up throughout.
Right.
I feel like they did that a lot.
Yeah.
Going forward.
Yeah. And there's a payoff right?
Yeah.
There's an insane payoff at the end of it. You know, fuck you, never fun like jets again. You know, like all that shit. You want it? You ain't shit. No, you ain't shit to me. You know, and
Yes.
well, it is a little fucked up. Like read these lyrics down. It's like, oh god damn it. Now that I know that like Robb was molested, these hit a little different.
A bit more personal than you had bargained for to begin with.
When I was growing up, I thought it was directed at someone who had violated someone else.
Right.
Not
It was a third person, not a first person.
yes. Yeah. So now here's where I think that maybe our opinions will maybe here's how we can reconcile things. I feel like the album should have ended there. Because as it stands, it's like a 52-minute album. You take off these last two songs, and it's like a tight, like 42-minute album, or 40-minute album or something, 44 maybe. But yeah, like I think that if you take those last two off, now this record as a whole doesn't have a plodding feel to it.
Maybe so. Maybe I would like to go listen to it again with that in mind. But I mean, even by virtue of just ending with Violate, like that alone would elevate things.
How do you? Because that's the thing. It's like there's cool stuff on Blistering, but there's nothing that's cool on Blistering that isn't like also on Spine or Bay of Pigs or you know what I mean? Like there's nothing. I mean, it's cool. But it's like, Violate is like just so epic. I don't know how you follow it with anything.
Yeah.
And so, but same thing with Black Blood of the Zodiac. Like it's a really cool main riff groove. You don't hear that kind of groove in 6/8 very often. And so, but yeah, I feel like the last two tracks. I mean, maybe you could have mixed them in here, but honestly, I don't think so. I think you just. Because I don't think like Blood Zodiac is like, yeah, this is like Violate, but like not as good. You know what I mean? Like, and so you end up with like a shorter record than Burn My Eyes by a little bit. But then again, this was the 90s. This was the CD era. This was the filler era.
Yeah.
So, but what's interesting is there's also like a lot of like bonus tracks for this. They did in this session, you know, that I had never heard until today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like one was a track for like Demon Knight, and it's like, okay, this is like a little precursor to Burning Red in a way.
Right.
You know, one was like this hardcore, just straight up hardcore track, which was on some compilation, which was rad. And then another one was just a legit rap cover of the song Colors, which might be an Ice Cube song.
I don't recognize the title offhand, but Demon Knight. Man, I'm
Ice-T. As Ice-T song.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like it's got like fucking like programmed drums or like, you know, like sample drums and Robb's like just legit rapping and shit like that. So I don't know what it ended up on, but yeah.
I was thinking about Demon Knight the other day, which is the Tales from the Crypt movie.
Yeah.
Which had an amazing, inexplicably amazing soundtrack.
I feel like there's like a whole sound, like we almost need to do a whole like a soundtrack episode.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up, because there's like that, there's The Crow, there's Spawn,
there's Last Action Hero.
Dude, there's
you know,
so many wildly like punching so far above their weight soundtracks.
I feel like that was like unique to that era.
Yeah.
You know, of like, yeah, man, like to where it like made sense for record companies, like, yeah, man, just put a bunch of our fucking music in this fucking movie. And
because the thing about a lot of that stuff is they weren't on other albums a lot of times.
Right. Or like the soundtracks were like the proto mixtape or like the playlist. It was a proto playlist in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Or like you got the Spawn soundtrack, which was like a metal band and a techno band.
Which,
or the Judgment Night soundtrack, which was a metal band and a rap group.
Yeah.
So cool. So fucking cool.
Right.
So yeah, we'll get back to that, I think.
So, but yeah, I think that's kind of, I think I said everything that I wanted to say, you know, like
looking at these liner notes and in in Burn My Eyes, we got Robb gives much respect and thanks to the following. But then you come over here to The More Things Change, and you got Robb gives a sincere thanks with an X and big what up to the following. Okay.
You're so legit, Rob.
I don't know. It's just anyway.
Yeah. That's like a whole other art form. Is like the
liner notes.
Yeah, the liner notes. You know,
the greets, the thanks. Yeah.
So, but yeah, like The More Things Change, and that's the thing too. Is like, this is another interesting thing. For me, the record did always end at Violate because I had a very traumatic experience at the dentist when I was like a year or two after this came out. So I could never handle the beginning of the blistering.
Oh,
like,
wow.
With that, I was like, can't skip. Can't deal with it. You know?
Yeah, okay.
So.
Okay.
But the first 8 tracks on here are like just perfect. Like, if you made me pick, like, first 8 tracks of this or Burn My Eyes, like, I have to pick this. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't hold it against you.
But again, it's kind of like what we were talking about, I guess, like with Trendkill versus Far Beyond Driven, how we sort of feel about that, I guess. I don't know. But, and I guess that's what's tricky is, like, I feel like I don't want to say it, but I like, Burn My Eye, like, there's a lot of like contradictory things for me because I can objectively say like, oh well, Burn My Eyes is an incredible monolithic, influential, perfect metal record, whatever. And I can say that The More Things Change has 2 extra songs you don't fucking need and is therefore not a perfect metal record. But I can't say that Burn My Eyes is better than The More Things Change. These things, that's not the associative property. It doesn't. Does not apply.
Right. It does not necessarily follow.
Because I don't even think that, like, because I think that anyway, I love the songs on here, you know, those first 8 at least.
Yeah, they're like. Luckily, you don't have to choose.
Right.
Yay.
Yeah.
Everybody wins.
Everybody wins.
So. Yeah, it's like 2 just utterly fantastic albums. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't.
Yeah.
I think that's everything that I had.
Yeah, same. Burn My Eyes was one of my favorite metal albums. Period. One of the best.
Yeah.
That's what I got, and then we'll go on through their catalog, and I feel like in a weird way this album was like they took a step in this direction and then didn't decide to keep going as hard in this direction.
Yeah, the next album is quite a turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this.
And they never fully went back to this.
No, they really didn't.
So, yeah, it's kind of an interesting, almost like an outlier in their catalog.
I guess it is.
In some strange way.
I guess it is. I almost feel like, I mean, and I'm grateful for it because whatever this is, I love whatever it is, but I almost feel like it is maybe an incomplete thought in a way of like, it's not quite what they like. If they would have had another 2 months or something, or another month to write it or record it, that maybe you would have gotten something, you know, something different or whatever. It's really hard to know what tensions there were in the band and what the writing was like. Hey guys, already booked your studio time. You've got 3 weeks to write your second record, and then we're going to start recording it, and you're going to have 3 weeks to record it. And then 3 weeks to master, 3 weeks to mix it, and then you're going to go out on tour with, you know,
right.
Then you're on tour for Europe, you know, then you're touring, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And on the one hand, they had a new drummer, but from everything that I read, it was like they took a lot of time and put a lot of thought into considering who their next drummer would be. So it leads me to believe they had like a lot of tryouts or time to deal with like making that choice. So maybe they were comfortable with it, but I don't know.
Right. And I think that Dave did like join them and did like finish, like did sort of join them and finish up like touring
Finish the
commitments
tour for Burning
Burn
Minds.
My. So there was something in there. I don't really know.
Maybe.
I don't know. I didn't do that aspect of the homework.
Yeah.
Beyond the scope of this pod.
Right.
But I think what is interesting, I feel like subconsciously we're sort of, because like we did the Pantera thing and now it feels right to do the Machine Head thing. And it is interesting because Machine Head is like straddling, there's like a torch passing almost in a sense,
Mm-hmm.
like Machine Head is like the halfway band between Pantera and nu metal. They're the average of that. And I think what's going to be interesting as a point of contrast is we each had very strong opinions about every single Pantera record. And that's not going to be the case with all the Machine Head records.
No, it's not.
Like, because like I don't hate a single Machine Head record. There's not a single one that like bothers me the way that like Reinventing the Steel bothered me.
Right.
That
was a very special case.
There's not a Machine Head record that like disappoints me the way that Reinventing the Steel did.
Sure. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. There's ones that are like, oh, that's that thing. Or you know what I mean? Like there's ones that I like for different reasons.
There are ones that I like for different reasons. There are ones that I got way into more than others, and there are some that I just didn't get very into.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. But I don't think that there's. That's not true. I think Catharsis was kind of a bad record, but not for the reasons that most people think it's a bad record.
Right.
But we'll talk about that when we get to it.
We'll get there.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was bad because I still think it had some of their best songs on it. It has some incredible songs. I think it's a very disjoint record, and I have tried so many times to like, what songs do you need to cut out to make this work?
Right. How do you carve this up into like a great album?
Right. So, but anyway. More machine. Next week might be the CJ episode. We'll see.
We will see.
It's about time.
We'll see.
So, all right. Bye.